Welcome, welcome. It is extremely exciting to be here today. We're going to have a lot of fun. We really are going to have a lot of fun. We're very excited to be here. Um, you know, the last 10 days for us have been a little roller coaster-ish, and it just started with a simple little CT scan. We knew there was a mass. I'm talking about Brett, my son. We knew there was a mass. We knew it was probably lymphoma. We knew several things, and we had kind of made a plan as to what we were going to do, solicit doctors' opinions. We were going to take this very methodically. And we went for the second CT scan, and it was at UT Southwestern in their out clinic, and they would not release Brett from the clinic. The mass was so large, he had a blood clot in his lung, they would not release him. So Brett looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "We're going to go home. We were going to go home." And they said, "No, you're not going anywhere." So that just started a journey, and we have, it's just been a journey. And I know many of you have taken this journey, and I think that's really been comforting to Brett, and I know especially to me. Because there's been such an outpouring. In the last 10 days, Brett's gone through 2 biopsies, first chemo treatment. I don't think he slept because the mass that he had is above his lung. It's so large that it's interfering with everything. The tumor, I guess I can call it, that it caused that he couldn't lay down. He couldn't lay down. He couldn't recline. He could only stand up straight or sit up straight. And it's really hard to sleep without that. And so this has been, like I said, a journey. It's difficult to go through this process and do everything right. I don't think we have done everything right as far as relationships with you all. I hope you can forgive us for what we haven't done right. But Brett wanted to say thank you today. Remember, it's not his normal appearance. He's been through a lot. He has some battle scars that he will forever have because he's traveled this journey, but we call them badges of courage and life lessons.
I just wanted to thank everybody so much for all the support that you've given my mom. She's been there every step of the way with me, and it's been just such, my whole family has really pulled together, and with your support, all of your wonderful words and thoughts, and I know all of the love that you've sent my way has given me so much strength. And however difficult this journey has been, I know that the passions and the love that we hold will get us through whatever trials that come our way. Just take it step by step, continue on, and know that everything's going to be okay. And just remember the passions that you hold and the love that you have and the support that we all share. And thank you so much for everything. It just means so much to all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mom. And so let's sew into some awesome jackets, guys.
So this sew-in was a traditional thing that we started last year. We're going to make it traditional. And we've had an opportunity to have lots of conversations. And what happens when all kinds of things happen to us emotionally, but it still doesn't stop us or prevent us from looking around and recognizing how lucky we are. How lucky we are. And I think that is the purpose of this sew-in, to recognize and remember how lucky we are. And we really recognize how lucky we are when we give. When we give. Our purpose today is to give to Toys4Tots. We are sacrificing and donating our time, some of our money as well, because there are children who just simply don't have the ability to navigate their path. Our family has grouped together and we've been able to pull together our medical knowledge, and we've had a tremendous amount of help and support and strength as we've navigated our path these last few days. But there are so many children who don't have the ability to navigate their path. So that is our goal today, to learn how to make a jacket and to look beautiful as we make that jacket and as we present ourselves to the world, and yet at the same time think of those who are less fortunate. We are at the tail end of Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to all of you. It ends tomorrow, but we wanted to wish you a really happy holiday season for you. And then for many of us, we are waiting our different holidays as they come to us. Christmas is around the corner, Kwanzaa as well. So really know that we are probably different than many corporations out there. We truly care about you, and we know that you really care about us, and that is priceless. Couldn't do or ask for anything more. So thank you. And we are going to make an awesome jacket today. So I want to go over and just cover the parts. We first want to talk about kind of some design. I want to go back a little bit, and I had made a skirt, and you'll see that skirt later in the webcast as we kind of focus to it. I had made a skirt. It had a blue center panel and black sides. It was back in September 14th that I had made that skirt. And all along I kept thinking, I want to make a jacket to match this. I want to make a jacket to match this. Well, here's my perfect opportunity to make a jacket to match that. So that was part of my fabric selection and why I selected what I selected in the process. The fabric that I selected is, and I made myself notes because as many times I kept looking it up, I could not remember the stinking numbers. 739 is the number to this. It's called Italian Slate Blue Cotton Pucker. And it's an Ellie Tahari print. It's a cotton, but yet it's a fall color, and I love that they're combining fabrics and colors to where we can wear cottons in the winter, and we can just combine it up a little bit. So that's my choice as to fashion fabrics. Then what I did is, because the skirt, and again we'll see that a little bit later on, I've got it on a mannequin, but I don't want to jump the camera around too much. The skirt panels on the side were black, and so what I'm doing is a black facing with a black collar. So the jacket's going to be two colors, and then I chose for a lining, typically probably in my old-fashioned way I would do black, and I thought, well, number one, they can't see black on a camera, so we nixed that concept. I know we still have a little black in here, but the goal was so that you could see what we're doing. But I chose a print that's really beautiful. It's actually 703. It's just a beautiful print, and it goes really well with the blue jacket. You can see it's going to be just a really pretty combination. Okay, so as you design, the one thing I wanted to mention is there are fabrics out there that 1500 is the jacket we're going to do today. I think everybody knows that. There are fusibles out there. In my particular case, I don't think the jacket needs any fusible. You're going to use fusible if you need a little more body, a little bit of stabilization if something's loosely woven, or if it's just simply that three main reasons. Support, like you want to retard the wrinkling. So linen would wrinkle a lot. This fabric that I'm using, when I go to take a piece of it and I crinkle it, it just doesn't have any wrinkling at all. It has a little bit of give to it. It has a little bit of stretch to it. But I'm not using the stretch for this jacket, so I'm not even going to consider the fact that I'm doing it, and I'm not even going to use any interfacing. So we're going to be interfacing free on this. Not for any reason or any order. I'm going to start by cutting the facing, the front facing, and of course the upper and under collar are going to be my black. And when you're using a small cutting surface like what I'm using, you want to make sure that everything stays, that your fabric all stays up on the table. So when I'm using a contrasting fabric, like I'm doing in this particular case, let me just hang on just a second here. Let me make sure that I've got this in the right place, because I don't want to cut it wrong. Yeah, I'm only using, like this particular black is the Eileen Fisher black. But when you're doing like little scraps like this, it's great to use a black that you have. Whenever I get a black, I always get, 10 yards or so of that black. And the reason I do that is so that as I go to coordinate it from jacket to skirt, I have that same black and it matches. So what I'm cutting now is, this is the upper and under collar. I think, we did this a year ago, you guys, and we did not record it. And I think that as we obviously thought back on that, that was a mistake. Because I do think that the goal of all of this is to be able to watch and to be able to see really how easy it is. So that's really our goal today. The undercollar is on a bias. I'm going to put that on a bias. The black fabric is just a woven, but it could be a stretch. I'm not relying on it for stretch. But it's just going to, in this case, it's a knit. No, what did I say? It was a woven? No, it's Eileen Fisher. I'm sorry. It's not. It is Eileen Fisher. It's the black, and it is a stretch. It's a knit. But again, because I'm not relying on the stretch, it doesn't matter whether it's stretch or knit. As long as I like these are kind of design principles. As long as I like the weight of that fabric and the weight of the two blended together, it really doesn't make a difference what I do. Alright, now let me just show you what I did here. The pattern itself has, for the undercollar is supposed to be on the bias. The pattern itself has a center back fold, so I added a seam allowance. I'm going to have a seam allowance at center back fold. It doesn't make a difference what you do. The reason I added that seam allowance is so that it would take up less fabric. So that's just a little trick that you can use when you're doing stuff like that. Okay, the only other thing that I'm cutting out of the black then is my front facing. So I've got my front facing. I'm using two little weights. I just throw them on, and then when I cut out, there's a concept in ready-to-wear, and it's called cross-cutting. And what you want to do is you want to cut past your pattern point, make sure your pattern is back like it should be, and then cross your cut so that you literally, it's extremely accurate. Over the years, we've all talked about, what's the most accurate way to cut or what's the best way to cut. I don't think there's an accurate way to cut, as long as when you turn your corners and pick up a new area, you make sure that you're crossing cuts. All right. And sometimes, I think it's a great present to ourselves at some point of the year to get new scissors. We made November kind of a scissor awareness month, and we sold a lot of Kai scissors, and I think that was really exciting to me to see, you can see our prices are not really high, but really to see that you recognize that those scissors are an important step. Okay, so the black I'm finished with. And again, if you're using black and you have a lot of yardage, try to cut off just about what you need. Like I cut it down to where I only needed 3/4 of a yard, so I didn't have a lot hanging off the table. Next I'm going to cut my fashion fabric. Again, there's no reason for the order. I'm just going to go ahead and lay this out. Usually on your fashion fabric, depending on your fashion fabric, the width, usually you're going to need 2 lengths. So when that's the case, just lay out 1 length and only try to get one at a time. As long as you're sure that you have enough, then if you don't have adequate space, a lot of times you can just lay it out on the carpet. Lay all your pieces out and then just kind of section it up on the table so that you can reach it all. Just by sheer habit, I always cut my biggest pieces out first. Certainly not necessary, but it's just kind of what I do. And of course, as far as you working across the width of the table, I would try to get the biggest pieces on possible. The question is, am I measuring grain? I am not. I am not. 2 reasons why I'm not measuring grain. Number 1, because this fabric has a beautiful texture to it. That texture is not symmetric. It's asymmetric. So there's not one straight line. It's just kind of a little, the texture to it is kind of cattywampus. I don't think that's the right word, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying. So as long as the pieces are just vertical, more up and down than anything else, it will look straight. So I don't need it
there's two reasons you need grain. Number one is for appearance, and number two is for the garment to hang correctly. The only reason a garment won't hang correctly if it's off grain is if it's over 20 inches in length. I'm not over 20 inches in length, so I don't even really need to worry about grain. I want the garment to go up and down, obviously, but that's all I need to worry about. Nothing else needs to be measured. And hopefully y'all are cutting along with me, right? Everybody's cutting, so we can all finish our jackets at the same time. You guys are going to post them on Facebook, right? Some of you like rotary cutters. I'm not sure why I don't. I just don't. So again, not a right or a wrong. I think I don't because they're high maintenance. I'm going to keep this piece for my lining, so I'm just going to take my jacket and put my fashion fabric pieces together. That's the back. I'm going to put this over here so that I know my lining needs to be cut with that. And then what I did is I turned all my pieces up. After we did the fitting, I transferred all the changes to my pattern, and then I wanted my jacket to be shorter. And this is something I really want to cover because even today I answered an email and there's so many, I don't understand why we think that if we want it to be longer, we add internally. I mean, it must be previous information we've been given, but when we want it to be longer, you just add to the bottom. If you add it internally, you change where the bust is, you change where the waist is, and that's not the goal. You just simply want it to be longer, so you should just add to the bottom. In this particular case, I just wanted it to be shorter, so I turned it up, and I wanted it to be 5 inches shorter, so I turned every single piece up 5 inches at the bottom. I didn't have to change any circumferences. I just did it at the bottom. People always ask me what I prefer as far as scissors go. I prefer a 10-inch, and the reason being is because the 10-inch gives me a bigger cut. And try really hard to use that 10-inch. Don't, you use just the tip. Try to use the whole blade as you cut, and your cuts will be much smoother and cleaner. Alright, so we're going up the front. Any questions, you guys? Because I've got a dart at the neckline, I'm actually just going to make a little cut where that dart is. I'm going to turn this around here so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to make just a little cut right there. And then what I do is, I'm going to grab some pins just for a minute. I'm going to put a pin right at the end of the dart. And I just put it in. And then this has got a dart here, so I'm going to put a pin there. And ready to wear, they actually do a cut. I'm not going to do a cut. I don't know why I don't do cuts. I think it's a little bit harder to do a cut. I think that's one reason why. But I think I just am fine doing a pin wherever they're supposed to be. So I just put my finger down, push it up, and then put that pin in. Now on this particular piece, because the front of this jacket is all one piece, it has a jagged bottom. So I'll show you this. So I folded it up 5 inches on this side, but then when I take it down you can see that jagged edge. So now that you've done this, just put this onto your pattern piece and cut out that jagged edge. And that way you don't have to measure all the way across as to, 5 inches. Just turn the 5 inches up all the way across, then take it back down to actually cut. And let me show you that. So there's the jag at the bottom. And you can see I just turned the whole thing up, and then the jag was shorter, so then I just cut that little section off. Alright, easy enough for that. That's my front. And actually, because the front is only used for the fashion fabric, I'm just going to put that away. I don't even need it anymore. So that's gone bye-bye. Okay, so that was the back and the front of the jacket, and that was one length. So now I can go ahead and go to my next length. And again, here we're just talking about, you guys, if you've got limited space and it's hard to, I think you get a more accurate cut when you do it on a table as opposed to the floor. I've cut for years on the floor, but I really do think that it's a little more accurate when you come up to a table. It's the hem. That's exactly what it is. Yes, perfectly said. Yeah, it's the hem versus the seam allowance of the facing. So your hem, I thank you for helping me, you guys, because you said it perfect. So the jacket has a hem in it, but it only has a hem where the facing stops. So that's why the bottom is got longer in one section. The facing will just come to 3 or 4 inches in, and then the hem of the jacket will pick up and sew to the other pieces, and you'll see that as we go on to later. When you wash fabric in Coca-Cola, no, you can wash any fabric in Coca-Cola. The fabric content of what you're washing in Coca-Cola has no bearing. It's the finishings in the fabric. It's the structure of the fabric that the Coca-Cola takes effect to. It's not just cotton. So you're going to have, it's going to do it on other fabrics as well. And I've got enough length. I'm actually going to add just a little bit to my sleeves. I've got really long arms, and I just don't like my sleeves to be too short, so I know many of you out there are saying you add to those sleeves, but I actually do. So I'm just going to add 1 inch to the bottom, and then I'll add that to the lining as well. People have asked me all the time, could you not be cutting out the lining at the same time? You could. I mean, I guess I don't know, I never feel like I'm in that big of a rush. And also, I've never seen it that way done in the industry, so not saying you couldn't do it, I've just never done it. And you all know, I don't hold myself up to be world-class sewer. I sew a lot and I love to sew, but you'll find lots of things that you'll want to do that are different or better than what I do. And normally this is not this hard to do this cap, but because I'm in this little corner of this room, it's a little hard to get to. Alright, because I'll need that sleeve for the lining, everything for the lining I'm going to put on for here, and I know that sleeve is done, so I'll put that in my fashion fabric pile. And then we're going to go ahead and keep going. Keep in mind that we only have, there's only 5 fashion fabric pieces. So, you know, when we think about how long does it take us or how long should it take us, I wouldn't think it'd take us longer than 30 minutes. I mean, that's kind of what I always budget it. I had a lady one time, though, she told me that she said it took her 3 hours to clean the kitchen counter or the kitchen table. That I will give you. But really, to cut these pieces, you know, even all of them shouldn't take long. And I am going to tell you a couple things I've learned over the years. I've really learned this from you guys. What we're doing today is we're making a line jacket. And as we make a line jacket, I'm a big believer, I'm going to pull this down just so I can kind of get to it a little bit better. I'm a big believer that commit to doing a line jacket in the beginning. So to me what that means, and I've had lots of ladies in classes where they said, yeah, we're going to do a line jacket. And when they were cutting out, I said, okay, where's your lining? They said, oh, you know, we'll cut that out later. And then when they made their jacket, I said, okay, well, where's your lining? Oh, you know, I'm not gonna line it. So I'm gonna really encourage you to commit that it's a line jacket, and before you ever start, cut out the lining. Just cut it all out. And I think you're gonna see as I do this today, I'm cutting it all out, I'm sewing it all out, I'm doing it. Would you add an inch to the lining, cutting line 2? Yes. What kind of what, sir? Oh, what kind of iron? That's a Rowenta. It's a DG 5030. I'm not sure they're even making this iron anymore, This iron over the years, although I love it, it's definitely had its share of problems. Um, they do have irons, they're just getting to where they're getting more and more expensive, unfortunately, but I love the iron for many reasons. When we start to iron, I'll kind of show why I like it. First off, you're going to see that, I never have to fill the iron the whole time, that it holds enough water that the whole entire thing can be done. I can sew all day by myself and I don't have to refill the iron, and I think that's really nice. It saves a lot of time. And also the iron itself doesn't have any water in it. The water's in the tank, so that's a good thing too. Okay, that's my side panel. That's also a lining piece, and that's a fashion fabric. So we've now cut out the black facing, the black upper and under collar, and we've cut out all of our fashion fabric pieces. And so now we're going to go to our silk lining. There is a difference in the right and the wrong side of this fabric, yes. I put right sides together. That's simply because when I go to sew, the right sides are already together. So when I do center back seam, it's probably just habit, but I do think there's a reason for that habit, because your seams are already together and you can start sewing right away. So yes, there's a right and a wrong. There's a right and a wrong to all the fabric pieces that I'm using, to the lining, to the jacket, to all these pieces. Alright. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Am I right in understanding I don't need to bother with grain on plain fabric? That's correct. If you can't see a weave or a print, like if you're doing stripe, you'd have to make sure it was, right on the stripe. But if you can't see an obvious print or whatever it is, no, you don't need to worry about grain. Like if you look at this lining I'm using, this lining is kind of psychedelic or whatever you want to call it. I don't even need to worry about grain. Number one, because the only reasons I need to worry about grain are for visual effect, and two, for drape. Those are the only reasons I need to worry about grain. Other than that, I'm good to go. Alright, so now we're on to lining. And again, just as a habit, I have a tendency to do my bigger pieces first. And then whatever additional lining that you have, that's, again, I needed 2 lengths in order to get my lining pieces to be enough of what I needed. So what I did is I just cut off what I needed. This is silk, and the only reason I use silk, you guys, is I hate poly. I don't hate poly. I just don't like poly as a lining because it's hard to sew. Now, there's a lot of contemporary polys like IT wide knits. Those are not hard to sew. Those are great. But you have a lot of polys that are like silk lookalikes that are thin, just like this, but it's silk, where it's really hard to press and it doesn't press well. And I don't enjoy the sewing process if I'm using fabrics that are really hard to manipulate. I really like fabrics that respond beautifully, I'm going to say. So I've got my weights on this and I'm cutting out, this is my front lining here. So I've got 5 lining pieces. I've got my front lining, my side lining, my back, and then I've got my sleeve, my 2 sleeve pieces. So again, you've got 5 pieces there. People always say silk is really slippery. Well, it's not if you just weigh it down. Just literally weigh it down and it can't slip anywhere, it can't go anywhere if you've got it weighted down. If you pin it, it can still move. But if you've got it weighted down, it's going to stay exactly where you want it to be. And because I don't really need these pieces, or this pattern piece again, I'm just going to leave it together and know that those are my lining pieces. Oh, sorry. What about, good thing I've got people back here to remind me that we're actually people watching. What about sleeves? I heard sleeves cut on the bias will not allow movement. I'm not cutting the sleeve on a bias. I'm just not measuring to make sure the grain is perfect. Okay, don't go extreme. Sleeves cut on the bias, I don't think there's anything worse. I had somebody say to me one time, why can't you do a sleeve on the bias? All you have to do is do a sleeve on a bias one time and you'll realize why sleeves aren't cut on the bias. There's no mobility. You're exactly right. but I'm not cutting them on the bias. I'm just not measuring to make sure perfectly on grain. They're still straight of grain, pretty much. So make sure that you're not adding to what I'm saying. It is important to cut accurately, but again, lots of ways to cut accurately without, really taking up a lot more time. The lining piece is 1 inch shorter than the main fabric piece, yes. I use these little, these were a gift. These are like little embroidered BBs, little bags. You can buy them, lots of things you can do. Honestly, I don't think it matters. I mean, it doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter. What really matters is that when you put them on a piece, they're enough weight that they hold it firm. That's all that really matters. So when you put it on, hold firm. My top sleeve pattern piece does not have a dot or notch at the top to match the shoulder seam. Where should I mark that? Let me show you that when we start sewing, and it's a really easy concept. This is the first pattern we ever did, and when I did this pattern, I think the original, I'm pretty sure we didn't put any notches on it because I don't really use notches. And I'll show you why in a minute. You don't need to be a pattern maker to not use notches. You just need to kind of have a base understanding of what the pattern, how it kind of interfaces with the next piece. So as we sew, I'll kind of show you where the notches are, and then I don't think you'll need notches either. The only time I add a notch is if I'm doing a dart, where I don't know the size of it and the dart is already built into the pattern. So it's important to have it then, but you don't need it in many cases. And I think it's a goal in our sewing to maybe free us up from notches, simply because they do take time. Alright, so I've cut my side piece. When I was cutting, oh, sorry. Did you turn 1 inch out? 1 inch out, what does that mean? I'm not sure what that means. Didn't see you do so. 1 inch out, I'm not sure what that means, you guys. Ask that again if you don't mind. Should I'm just laughing because the crew behind the scenes is laughing at this question. The question is, should cutting tables be a certain height to prevent backache? Absolutely. I don't normally cut on this, you guys. I'm just, trying to do everything behind a camera. Okay, and we're trying to do it live. So there's definitely some... 1 inch out. I don't know. Oh, did I cut an inch off? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I used the same pieces and then I just cut an inch off. You don't have to, you guys. Your pieces are all marked. You don't have to do that if you don't want. Okay, so I've cut my 3 pieces. I've got 2 left with my sleeves. Okay, so let's go back to this lining, or this grain question that you have that's kind of bugging you all. This portion, here's my selvage over here. This portion is straight to there. So, it's not perfectly straight. If I were doing pants, I would measure. But I know in this jacket, in this lining, for instance, it's not going to be visual because it's crazy, wild print. And it's not going to affect the drape because it's too short of a piece. So I already know that I don't have to worry about grain being exact. But that doesn't mean I go for the bias. That's too extreme. Alright, I think it's just amazingly fun to take these fabrics that are just, I think, are so beautiful and be able to make anything we want out of them. Such a great art, I think. Obviously I love it. Obviously y'all do too. Just a whole lot of fun. And I'm going to kind of cut across this because my table height is not where I would like it to be. I'm going to leave a little pile under there. That's to be cleaned up later. And yeah, positioning when you're cutting makes a lot of difference, because I'm going to pull this down. If I can get to it, you know, and get to it from certain angles, my cutting's going to be much more accurate. But keep in mind that as I'm sewing, if the edges aren't perfect, I'm going to clean that up while I'm sewing anyway. So, not critical. See, I have a nice little lining pile over there. These piles are always really pretty. Okay, we're at one last piece. Any questions that you all have on cutting? What do I do with my scraps of fabric? I throw them away. That's just the honest answer. I'm so not a quilter. You know, I'm really not a quilter. And I don't mean that negatively. I'm just not, I don't know. I mean, except if they're leather, I don't throw my leather scraps away. But usually these fabric scraps are just too little to really do anything with. Is everybody cut out? Everybody got their jacket all cut out, or am I the only one? I don't hear you. Are they there? Oh, somebody just joined in and asked how Brett is doing. He's survival. He is surviving. He is a survivor. And at the very beginning, Brett was on. So for you who didn't see the beginning, you can replay that. And Brett was on. He really wanted to take a minute to just say thank you to everybody, and so he did that. Alright, so what I did is I forgot. I didn't do the right cut line. I was supposed to make it longer, but I actually added to the bottom. So I remember I did that wrong. You know, it's so funny because we talk about, in workshops and classes that I do, we always talk about mistakes and how do we make mistakes and how do we prevent mistakes. And I just think that I don't think you can prevent them. I think that I think a couple things on the pattern, I make all the changes on the pattern. Except I'm just adding an inch. See, that's why I made a mistake. If you don't make the changes on the pattern, you're more likely to make the mistake. So one way to make sure that you don't make the mistakes is to make all the changes on the pattern. So I'm going to tell you that I would recommend that. Okay, so because we have finished with this table, we're going to hand this off to our wonderful behind-the-scenes guys. You got that? And they're going to take that, and we're going to bring in our ironing board. So this is normally kind of how I sew. Alright. And we're going to go to the sewing machine. I think I'm going to try to sew or iron on the opposite side of the board so that we don't have to keep moving the camera around. I think is what we're going to try to do. We'll see how it goes. Okay. We ready over here, Jared? Alright, we ready? Let's do it. I have done a few things ahead of time. I have threaded my machine. I've chosen my thread. I've wound up a couple bobbins just in case I need them. Y'all don't need to do all that stuff. And I have my shoulder pads. I have the things I need for my jacket here with me. My machine is at 3.5. 3 or 3.5, it doesn't make a difference. And here are all my little beautiful pieces. I'm going to tell you that we do have, you guys, a special on Sew Study tables. We're not making any money on these Sew Study tables, but I'm going to tell you something. They are fabulous. They really are fabulous. So I always start with my center back seam on my jacket, and the reason I do that is because I've got right sides together, and it's the only piece that is cut and sewn to itself. It's cut at the same time and sews to itself. Do I redraw the pattern? I'm not sure what that means. Kind of ask that again, maybe. Do I redraw the pattern? I got all kinds of machines behind me. This is a serger. I got 2 sergers behind me. Okay? Well, we're going to serge one little part on a jacket, and that's it. Okay. So back to the center back seam. This is really important because I notice when I'm in classes and women are sewing on jackets, I kind of quietly hover around to see how this center back seam goes together. The reason being is because this center back seam will kind of tap into how you handle this fabric, how this fabric moves, how, kind of how it reacts to your handling and the sewing of it. Kind of sounds a little weird, like psychologically, but it's not that weird. Just all I'm saying to you is the most important thing is that I'm ending at the bottom of the jacket, same place together. If when I get to the bottom, if those pieces aren't aligned, then you are handling it your handling or your sewing is incorrect. I had an email from a lady who asked me how many inches a Sew Study table had in that. The answer is 6 inches. She said, well, I don't know if I can sew with 6 inches. It's not how I'm used to sewing. You should change your habits. I hate to be so blunt on that, but you should change your habits because I want to have a space and a diaphragm around this machine where I am, able to leave things flat. Okay, so I'm doing the side panel. When I start at the side panel, I start at the bottom. The side panel has kind of a funny little curve to it, so by starting at the bottom, I don't have to worry about any kind of alignment. When you are sewing, this hand should be moving the fabric along. And your right hand should be guiding the seam allowance width. So your left hand is pulling the fabric, or not, it's not really pulling it, it's just kind of making sure it's moving along. And also when I'm kind of keeping this taut back here, I'm not allowing the layers to shift. So because industrial machines do not have any of that fancy stuff that they've sold us at home, they don't have differential feeds, they don't have any of that. So the skill of the seamstress in moving the fabric along is what makes the difference. There's only one size on the Sew Study. I think it's 18 by 24. I think is what it is. It's on the website. Okay, that's the back. I'm going to put the back down for right now, just simply because I know how I'm handling it. I know I'm handling it well. I know the pieces are going together nicely, so I'm not concerned with that. I'm going to jump to my front because my front has darts. If my front didn't have darts, I wouldn't jump to the front. I would just continue. But I'm going to go ahead and jump to the front and put in darts. When I remember that my right sides are together. So again, the reason I do this is because when I'm cutting out my fashion fabric, when I put in pins for the darts, all of my markings now are on the wrong side. So that makes it really incredibly easy for me to just put pins in here. Once I've done that, I'm going to pull the 2 layers apart, and you can see that all my markings stay in one side. So the first thing I'm going to do, I think it's the easiest way to mark darts personally. I do not backstitch. You overstitch, ladies. So you can see that I started that dart up there. When this is folded in half, you can see those two pins are coming together. So I take away this underpin and don't worry about it. This is just that I want to make sure it's the width of the dart, and then I can turn right back out to make sure I'm stopping it at that point. Because I know this pattern is right, because I know it fits, because I've made others, I clip the dart. If you didn't, don't clip the dart. But when you clip that dart, I'm going to go up with it so that I can press it flat, and I'm going to go down with it. Again, if you're not sure the dart's not right just yet, don't clip the dart. Okay, and that way, because the dart is large in this particular jacket, you can see that it wouldn't open and lay flat if this wasn't released. So you want to be able to clip to the, not all the way, but just clip a little bit so that that dart can press flat and it'll look really nice on the outside. So this, now also I had an email, I forgot to mention this, about leaving this dart out. You know, it's your jacket, you can leave it out. I'm going to tell you that you're going to look better with the dart stitched. You're going to look like you have a shape. Regardless of your shape, it will, remember, clothing is all about illusion, so it will give you an illusion that you have a shape, and that's the goal. So I would recommend you not leave that dart out. This dart that I'm stitching, it's under the lapel. It is, you can't leave it out. If you leave it out, the pieces won't, sew together, so you don't really have an option on that. This is your B, C, and D cup dart up here at the neckline. And again, because I know this dart is correct, I'm going to slash it, and then when I get to pressing, I'm going to be able to completely press that open. Now that's going to really help with a roll, with the roll of that collar. So as I look at that front piece, you can see, and there's no need to press it right now. Our pressing is many times kind of overrated. Remember, where my pins went in, I know is my wrong side. And I kind of said that wrong, you guys. I don't mean pressing is overrated. I mean it really happens too often. So in the process of all of this, and in our guide sheets, the way we did this, I'm doing it exactly as the guide sheets are, because we definitely don't want to compromise our press, but there's no reason to go back and forth after every single seam is stitched. So I'm going to do what we call session 1. It's all my straight seams. Clip the dart. Don't get too close. Get about 1/8 of an inch away. You just want to allow the outside of that dart to be able to lay flat. And then you want to clip up and then go down, and then I have a bust dart. I honestly think of all of the things that are fancy and extras and basics, I gotta tell you, I think this Sew Steady table is, it can't be a necessity, because I know you can do without it, but it's a real great find, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to go back now, and I'm going to join the front to my side. I had done that. Remember, I'm doing all my straight seams, so I'm just like a little factory, just sew, 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 sew. And since I've got it here, I might as well do the shoulder seam, because it's kind of laying right there. Shoulder seams are a straight seam. Keep in mind that they don't cross anything else, so there's no reason I can't do them before I go to the ironing board. I'm trying to do everything I can before I go to the ironing board, and then I can make less trips to the ironing board. So basically my first trip to the ironing board will have all the jacket body itself together. Okay. And then again my shoulder seam. Alright, there we go. Now, because the jacket, you know, different methods are done different ways. I don't, it's called bagging the jacket. I don't bag the jacket. I always leave the bottom of the jacket open. And the reason I do that is because I feel like over the years I'm not a perfect sewer, and you just have to be perfect sewer to get all that even. I bag the sleeves, I'll show you how to do that, but I leave the bottom of the jacket open. So because I do that, I hem the lining by machine, and then I serge the bottom of the jacket. So there's no reason that can't be done right now. I'm literally just going to serge. So here's the bottom where that jux is. Again, this is only the seam allowance. This is the actual hem. So I'm going to that's where I'm going to do. And I put this serger here right behind me so I could easily just transition back to it. And I'm going to just open the seam allowance as I get to that portion. Alright, and that's the only serging. The only other serging you're going to do on this jacket is at the very bottom of the lining. I'll leave the serger go in case. So here, if you can see this, I've got the jacket body together. Alright, isn't that pretty? And I'm going to throw that to the ironing board because we're not going to do anything more to it until we get the pressing done. Okay, so I've got my sleeve now. On the sleeve, if you notice in the sleeve, you're going to have a lower edge here, and you're going to know that's the front, and you're going to have a higher edge back here, and you know that's the back. So right now I'm not setting it. I'm not going to worry about the notches. I'm just going to, and I'm going to tell you that because the top of the sleeve is kind of a curve, I always start from the bottom. Oh, it's black. I decided to go black on all of my threads. For everything. I'm black on my sewing thread, I'm black on everything. Okay, so I've got two sleeves. I want to put the front to the front and the back to the back. And again, because the bottom lines up so evenly, I always start at the bottom. I know at this point that I'm handling the fabric correctly. I know nothing's shifting. I tested myself on that center back seam. So I feel comfortable that where the pieces end up, they end up correctly. So it's really important to sew consistently. I have noticed so many women in their sewing don't sew consistently, and I think the answer as to how to help you to do that is to keep this left hand moving this fabric. But I also think it's knowing your pattern and kind of trusting your pattern, if that's fair. And I think that helps with just kind of doing it. Okay, so remember the sleeves are part of my straight seams. So I'm still just on step 1, I'm sewing my straight seams. And it is important if you're sewing with fabric that's similar, like, well, I was going to say like the lining, but in my case, when I'm sewing the lining, I've got a right side and a wrong side. But if you have a lining, I've seen this happen a lot, they sew 2 sleeves identical. So instead of sewing, you know, the right sleeve and the wrong sleeve, they sew it to be the same. Make sure your edges are together. If your edges aren't together, then your seam allowances will change length. You don't want to do that. Because I'm at the sleeve, I'm going to go ahead and do the tie interfacing. You could do it later, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it now. So I'm going to turn my machine to baste, and I'm going to inside out the sleeve. If I fold the sleeve in half, this is what I was going to show you. You guys don't really need notches. But if I fold the sleeve in half, you can see that the sleeve is going to have a mirror image of itself. The very top, do you use a Teflon sewing foot? I do. I use this Teflon sewing foot, and I said, does it really make a big difference? I'll have to experience my layers not matching at the end. I do think a Teflon foot makes a big difference. I think in my process of sewing and becoming a better seamstress, the Teflon foot was definitely something I noticed along the way because it gave glide to that top layer. So I forgot completely, so thanks for even asking. I think the Teflon foot makes a big difference. I don't sew anything without the Teflon foot because it makes sense to me that it just helps the top layer go through. Okay, back to the sleeve, sorry. I'm going to put a pin here at the top, and that's going to be my top dot because you can see that this mirror images itself. And then the lower seam is the front and the higher seam is the back. So as I'm lining this up, I only need the top and the bottom. Whether the other notches are exactly in alignment or not, it just doesn't make a difference. Those are the two that matter. And really it's the top, because it's got to be straight of grain. It's got to look like it's straight of grain. So I've turned my machine to baste. I've cut my 2 tie interfacing, and I'm going to come in here and put in my tie interfacing. You don't have to do it now, but because I haven't pressed the sleeve, I'm just going to open up that seam, and right on my seam allowance is where I'm going to anchor this tie interfacing. And just give it a little bit of pull. Remember, I'm at a baste. I have to be at a baste when I do this. But just give it a little bit of pull, and you're going to see that it will just simply, I'll show it to you in a minute. This tie interfacing is like the magic stuff. You know, that how tight do you pull? It really comes with experience, you guys. It's probably not a possible thing that I tell you. You're just going to see that after you've done it, you'll see that cap just pulls in really nicely. So if it doesn't pull in to where you feel like it's enough, then just give it a little bit more pull. I'm going to inside this back out because I've got to press my seams open, and it's ready to go to the press board. And then I'm going to do it again on this sleeve. And you don't have to do your tie interfacing now. You could certainly do it after you press your sleeve. You know, I just do. The front armhole is not cut deeper than the back. It's not. It used to be, you know, 50 years ago or whatever. Our armholes were really, really small. And with our armholes being small, they were cut very close to the body. The problem is that when you have those armholes, and when I'm talking about armholes, I talk about they're like 14 inches. So when your armholes are that small, you can't move. So our armholes today are like 20 inches, 22 inches, and it's a big difference of what it used to be. So you don't press the seams on the sleeve before you put the tie interfacing on. You can, you just don't have to. I just decided to go ahead and make it continuous, and I've got the body together, I've got the sleeves together, and I just opted to kind of complete it. Alright, so tie interfacing is seam to seam. No, it's not seam to seam. It's really just, let me go back to the sleeve and I'll show you. It doesn't have to be exact, but recognize this portion of the sleeve has no interfacing in it at all. There's no easing. All the easing comes up to this portion of the sleeve, so don't worry if this section down here doesn't have tie interfacing. It's where the French curve pivots, to be quite honest. Let me kind of show you here. It's where the notch is, but I think that you can see where the notch is without literally marking the notch if you understand where it is. The French curve goes like this, and see the point which is right there where it leaves the sleeve? That's where the French curve turns up like that. So you can see that as it goes from here and leaves the sleeve, it's two positions. That's where the notch is. The notch is an indicator as to where that French curve has pivoted positions. So, but I don't need my French curve. As long as I know that and understand that, when I look at the sleeve, I can see that the change of the position is right there. That's where I want my tie interfacing, from right around that point, doesn't have to be exact, up and around to the other side. Down at the bottom of the sleeve, there is no easing that takes place in that area, so I don't need any tie interfacing in that place. The function of the tie interfacing is twofold. Number one, it's to, whoops, I forgot to turn my machine back to baste. The tie interfacing is twofold. It's to ease it up, not gather, because gathering you would have wrinkles. It's to ease it up, and you're going to see later it's actually going to become my sleeve head. So it does both of those things. You don't want to substitute out. Anything could do the easing, but anything can't become the sleeve head. So you don't want to use something else to become the sleeve head, because it's just not going to be as nice. The front armhole not being cut deeper than the back. Front armhole not being cut deeper than the back. I thought it was just the opposite. I'm not sure. You thought what was just the opposite? I'm not sure. The front armhole is not cut deeper than the back. That's a pattern thing, you guys. I mean, you can do whatever you decide you want to do. But what I'm saying to you is, if you'll go and observe armholes, sleeves, whatever you want, in these days, because the armhole is, like this is 21 inches, there's no need for them to be different from the front and the back. When they were 14 inches there was, but they're just large openings now. So that's changed a lot over the last, 30, well, it's been 40 years, more than that. How wide is the tie interfacing? It looks about an inch. In your pattern there is a pattern piece for it, so you don't even need to worry about it. Just use your pattern piece and cut it to be according to the pattern piece. Alright, so now what we're doing is we're using, I'm on the collar and I'm sewing the upper collar. The upper collar is always going to be, or your under collar is always going to be a little bit smaller than the upper collar. So I actually kind of just pulled it taut because it'll automatically roll the ends under, and then you're going to do the same thing on the ends. You're going to cross your stitching. So my collar, again, what I'm doing to my collar is I'm just doing those straight lines. And I'm not, when I get to the corner, I'm not leaving my needle down. I know this is black. I'm not leaving my needle down to change positions. I cross those corners. It shows it really easily on the guide sheet. So you can fold, and then invert that collar. And it's just perfect. It's just a perfect little point. So I'm going to fold, We've shown this numerous times. I think we have a whole YouTube on it so that you can watch how to do that. Okay, that's my collar. It's not pressed. Anyway, That's my collar. So we're going to throw that over there. That's in my ironing pile. You guys, we got a lot to iron, huh? But before we iron, we're going to go ahead and do our lining, because I'm telling you, I'm warning you, if you stop, you won't get to, you won't do it. I know you guys, you just won't do it. Alright, so we're going to do our lining, and we're going to start with the same process. I'm going to start with the center back. And remember, I put right sides together so that I can just continue. Do you sew with the undercollar on top or bottom? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as you're not shifting your seams, then it doesn't matter. Now, when you start handling silk or lighter weight fabric, it's really important to have a hand back here, because I want to make sure that there's no shifting that's going on when this thing is being done. Will you, what does that say? Will I stitch the collar? I just did. Maybe she didn't see that. Okay, so there's my center back seam. That's kind of what I was looking for, was to make sure that handled okay. Alright, then I'm going to add in my side piece. So you're doing the same thing again. You've already done it once, you're just going to do it again. Are you guys ahead of me or behind me? Because I know y'all are sewing at the same time. Alright. Well, I do know that many of you all have said to me, as we've sewn, or whatever we've sewn, that then what you do is you watch it later as you're sewing. Like right now you just watch, and then later as you're sewing, you actually have it on while you're sewing, so that you can watch and then repeat. So I think that's cool. Whatever way works for you. I don't know, I think this table just saves so much time. I think the reason I think it saves time is because you don't have to reshift everything. As sewers, I've noticed we have a tendency to kind of keep everything on our lap, whereas the table, to me, allows me to keep it on the table and not have to keep realigning it every time I go to sew. Now, because this is the back and the side back, it's going to sew to a front lining, not the front. Front linings and front facings have no darts in them. There are no darts. So it kind of saves that one step. Just when I sewed those two darts in the front, it saves those two steps. So this is my front lining. See, I think that when I leave that piece down, it's really nice to have the table, because I can just line it up on the table and then start sewing. And keep in mind, I mean, I don't know why that just keeps catching. Just a second. I love this lining. It's pretty wild. Maybe it's my wild side brought out or something. I'm not sure. Guys behind the scenes are laughing. Not sure if that's because I don't have a wild side or because I do have one. Why don't you dart the lining? It will it sew when attaching the... Well, just as a pattern making... As a pattern maker, darts can happen between the pieces. So for instance, as I made the pattern, you have to have darts on the outside because they have to do the job that darts do. But now as I go to the inside and I break it up into more pieces, I can build the darts in between the front facing and the front lining. And so that's typically what's done. Okay, so now I have the back, I have the side back, I have the front lining, and now I have the front facing. Remember, the front facing is black. And so I'm going to sew that front facing in place. It's hiding. I'll quit telling y'all how much I love this table, but another reason I like this table is I can put all my pieces like underneath, so it gives you like extra storage. Okay, so on this where the right sides are together, I'm just going to mark these right sides. Just, not that I could confuse them, you can't confuse them, but I still think it's just a little bit easier in the process. Before I do that, I'm going to hem the lining, because the lining should be hemmed as it comes into the front facing. Front facing has no dart. No darts on the front facing, no darts on the front lining. The dart is between the front facing and the front lining. Okay, so when I go to hem this, I hem it because I don't ever press my seams open on linings. You can't tell where the seams are. The lining is so thin it doesn't make any difference. So I just roll this twice, like just a little cord, like a shirt tail hem, 1/4 inch roll. Roll, roll, tuck it under, tuck all the threads in there. And you're gonna hem this. And it's easy to hem it just before you put it to the lining anyway, so you might as well do it now. So just a little 1/4 inch roll twice. Now, keep in mind, this is if you're not, I don't bag the lining. If you do bag the lining, it has to be cut differently. It can't be cut like this. So you'd have to kind of revisit your pattern pieces. You press the lining seams to the side. I don't press them to the side, I don't press them open, I don't press them at all. I press from the right side. I'll show you when we get to pressing. I press from the right side because which way the seams go, you would just never, ever, ever, ever be able to see it or feel it. You know, the pressing the lining, seams open, is it's just not necessary to me. So I don't ever do it. But I learned it from factories. They don't ever press those seams on the lining. When it comes to the lining, they press it from the right side. They just press them flat. So whichever way they go, whether they're together, whether they're to the side, doesn't make absolutely any difference. So I kind of picked it up along the way that in my mind, home sewers were a little bit nutso on that kind of stuff. Are you going to Puyallup, Washington in February? I am. I'm going to be there on Thursday and Friday only. I'm teaching a class on Thursday. I don't remember the class, to be honest. And I'm teaching, the lining won't go under. I'm just going to poke it under right there. And I'm teaching a class on Friday. And then that's it. Just be there for 2 days. Makes me wonder how to adjust the main front pattern piece. Should I leave the front alone and make adjustments on the other pieces? Okay, I gotta have more information than that. Makes me wonder as to how to adjust the main pattern front piece. What adjustment are you making to that main front pattern piece? I'm not picking up on the question, just because I don't know what adjustments you want to make. Okay, so my lining is hemmed. What to choose? A sewing table as yours, or making a hole in the table to sink the machine in, but then the machine will be lower. Any thoughts? You know, I think it depends on how often you change out your machine. If you've sewn with one machine and you plan on sewing with one machine for many, many years, then, you know, I'm okay to get the table that sinks, but you got to keep in mind, if you get the table that sinks, that's specific to a type of sewing machine, and then you go change sewing machines, whereas the table is only $100 or not even. So I think if you're going to change sewing machines, I would do a table personally. Okay, remember I told you there was going to be one other place that we were going to use the serger, and that's just at the bottom of the lining. Alright, we're done. I'm going to turn that off because I don't need that serger anymore. So let me just show you where I've done here. This is the front facing. And this section right here is where we'll sew to the lining. So, but a little bit of that will show, so a little bit of that is serged. Now this is all in your instructions, you guys. I just find that if you do it before, I think it saves you just a little bit of time. So I have a tendency to just kind of do it as I go along. Alright, but if you don't do it at this point, you'll come back and do it. Now what I'm going to do is sew the front facing to the lining. And I think I missed a question in there. You guys asked me, what did bagging the lining mean? And if you look at jackets, bagging the lining is just the lining holds up the hem. The lining holds up the length of the jacket. So you'll see that. Okay, hang on, let me catch this up. Because the facing, having a built-in dart, but I need a straighter pattern at the tummy. Oh, it won't match up with the facing. Good. Okay, I understand what you're saying. So basically, if you put the facing and the lining together, you will see where the gaps are, like at the waist dart, and if you need a smaller waist dart, then you should fill in that gap with how much smaller you made the waist dart by. Yes, that's a good question. Alright, so here's my front facing. It's going to sew to this front lining, and I'm going to start at the top. Are you opening up the seams? Not on the lining. I don't care about the seams on the lining. The lining is so thin you'll never know where the seams are going, which way they've been pressed. And it's really funny because every time I say that I think of this woman named Billy Burke, and for many of you, you know her, Billy Burke. She's such a beautiful seamstress. I mean, everything is immaculate. I'm sure she's just really having a hard time listening to me right now. But when I do lining, I just press it. You'll see when I go to press it, I just press it from the right side. And that's just what I do. If you want to spend your time pressing it, you guys know, I'm okay with that. It's your jacket. Okay, so this is the front lining is going to the front facing, and because I have a contrasting facing, it's going to be a little different color. Now, when you go to do this, I always do a certain side first. So I always want my lining to be on top. I always want my lining to be on top when I'm sewing lining to a fashion fabric, because if the lining's on the bottom, your feed dog will have a tendency to eat your lining. So you want your lining to be up, so that will only leave you one side to be able to do first. And you're going to start at the top, because I want it to just end where it ends. You're going to be about 3/4 of an inch shorter at the bottom. So let me show you that just as I go to do this. And you can see that my lining is hemmed and my front facing is serged, which is all going to give me a beautiful result for the ending. So the lining is about 3/4 of an inch shorter than the front, because I want it to cover the hem. It's all hemmed, it's all serged, That's all ready to go. When I go to do this side, starting out, I have to start at the bottom, otherwise my lining will have to go on the bottom. So I'm going to start with my lining from the bottom the same distance as it was on this side, so that my sewing is accurate. And I'm going to sew all the way up to the top. So this way my lining is always on the top when I sew to a fashion fabric piece. And you guys, just if you're asking questions right now, we have a changing of the guard. The guys in the back are changing some things up. So hang on and they'll catch up. Just a minute. Okay. So I did the front lining, I did the front facing. And you can see that front facing now is attached to the lining, and now I can do the shoulder seam. I can't do the shoulder seam without the front facing because I didn't have, it won't match, the width won't match. And because again I always keep the lining on top. I told them you guys were changing, so you might want to check questions. Alright, so I probably should be timing myself just out of curiosity. Like, how long the jacket body took, how long, and it's not that I think time is important as much as I think that jackets don't take as long as I think many of you think they do. I asked a lady one time how long it took her to make a jacket. She told me it took her 3 years. I don't think that was all kind of dedicated to there. Okay, so here's my lining and facing unit. And now, because again, all I'm sewing, I'm still just sewing straight seams. I still have my sleeves. And then we get to press. Okay, often when making a jacket, I find the facing piece, which is cut the same as the jacket, front jacket piece, is a bit bigger due to turn of cloth. No, that's not true. Do you shave a scant bit off of it? No, the facing piece should be smaller. And actually it shouldn't be either one, because I'll show you that when the jacket lapel turns back, it's rolled under on the top part and it's rolled over on the bottom part. The buttonhole is where it changes positions, so it should be cut exactly the same. And the pressing is what pulls it in. And the button placement and the buttonhole is what will hold it there. The pressing will hold it there. But the piece itself should not be cut differently. It is true of an undercollar, but not true of a jacket, a front facing. Okay, here's my sleeve. Remember, I'm going to sew from the bottom of the sleeve up. If your lining is sheer, would you finish seams of fashion fabric? I notice your lining would not allow the seams of the jacket fashion fabric to sew. If your lining is sheer, I don't know why you would use sheer lining. But if you did, I mean, the whole purpose of lining, you guys, there's two purposes of lining. One is cosmetic, and one is, you know, get the jacket off and on. Those are your two purposes. So if you're going to use a lining that's sheer, then you're avoiding the cosmetic portion. Would I finish the seams? Yeah, I probably would, but I probably wouldn't use a lining that was sheer so that I wouldn't have to do it, but that's, you know. If the fashion fabric and lining is sewn together, so the inside doesn't show any seams. Is that called English? Oh, you're from Norway. Hi, you guys are staying up so late for this. The fashion factory lining is sewn together. It's just called lined. I mean, that's just a lined garment. I don't think if it's sewn together. Yeah, I think that's just called lining. I'm not sure. That's not much help. I'm not sure. No, understitching, is that what the question? Understitching is when you're simply sewing the facing. That understitching doesn't have anything to do with the lining. That's when the facing is actually stitched to give it an extra hold in place. But understitching applies to the facing, not to the lining. So I'm not aware of any terminology that applies to the lining. So after our straight seams are done, so I think the one thing I like about this order of assembly, you guys, is I think it really helps us get a jacket sewn. So for instance, if you saw that what I did in this session is all I did was sew straight seams. So let's say we only had 20 minutes, but we really wanted to work on this jacket. We could just run upstairs, my sewing room's upstairs, but we could, you know, go to our sewing machine and just sit down and just do straight seams. We wouldn't even have to turn on the iron. So a lot of times when I'm trying to get a jacket done, or, you know, trying to get it done pretty quick, I know that there's lots I can do that doesn't involve pressing. So I don't even need to worry about pressing. I could just come up and start doing straight seams. I could do the collar. There's, you know, many things I could do. Called in English. I mean, you sew around the armhole and neck hole, leaving. That's called bagging the lining. That is called bagging the lining. I'm going to show you that as we get to the lining. It's called bagging the lining. So that's when the jacket. I understand what you're saying. Yes. I'll show you those differences when we get to that point. No, we're not doing welt pockets on this jacket. This jacket's really too short for welts. So I just opted that I didn't want on this ones. If I decide I want them afterwards, I can go back and add them. But also for just the whole lesson factor of it, we've done welt pockets on a YouTube, and it's so clear and simple that I just felt because I had done it, I didn't really need you to watch me doing welt pockets again. I would do them in black, by the way, on this jacket if I decide to do them. But I can always do welt pockets after the fact and go back in and add them. But this jacket's short, so you know, I just didn't feel like the welt pocket was necessary. Absolutely, you guys. I think it's you know, as we get more into fashion and buying clothes, I think it's just incredible as we really start to recognize, because there's so much we can cater to what we want it to be. Alright, so I'm actually going to put these sleeves in before I press, because I don't need to press it all and then put the sleeves in, so I'm going to go ahead and put the sleeves in. There's no interfacing at all in the jacket. There's no interfacing. Interfacing is not needed for this fabric. It certainly could be added. I mean, if you just like your garment to have interfacing in it, it's up to you. But keep in mind that if you are going to use interfacing, it should be for a reason, and you should be the person who decides the reason. So I folded the sleeve in half. I put a pin at the top and the bottom. This is the lining sleeve. I'm sewing the lining into the jacket, into the lining, to the facing unit. And I put a pin at the top and the bottom. The bottom seam will align to the side seam, and the top will align to the shoulder seam. Okay, so let me put this on here and just show you what's going to happen when it comes to the lining. The bottom of the sleeve I pin in first, because the bottom of that sleeve is a bias. There is and should be no pull or no easing in that section. Alright, then what you're going to do, because you don't have tie interfacing on the lining, you're simply going to kind of pleat the sleeve in place. So just take a little bit and put a pin. And just kind of divide what the tie interfacing would be doing. You're going to divide that up into the sleeve. And you can see it's not a lot, there's not a ton. So maybe 3 sections on each side. And then you're going to put, what you want to do though when you're doing this is you don't want to get all the fullness, which is normally eased in with tie interfacing, you don't want to get it down at the bottom because your sleeve won't move forward. You want to, get the fullness up in the top portion. So that's why, but you can look at any jacket that's made in the store and you'll see that it's just kind of pushed up in there and pleated in place. And that's what you're going to do. There's no reason to, I've never seen tie interfacing used in the upper portion of the sleeve when it comes to lining. So I'm just going to sew that in place. So when I sew it in place, I'm going to put the sleeve side down because that will help me kind of pull it into place. I'm not even watching, I call it chunk it. You're going to chunk in the inside. I'm not even looking at the inside. I don't even want to see what's going on with the inside. Doesn't matter what's going on with the inside. The pins will hold it in place. Just make sure as you're sewing that the seam allowances don't pull away. In a sleeve where you have concave and convex seams, you want to make sure that those seam allowances stay together so that the stitch lines have an opportunity to get back together. It doesn't matter where you start or stop stitching as long as you go all the way around. Keep in mind, it doesn't matter if it's pressed or not pressed because again from the lining is so thin that it will press beautifully after the fact, and I'll obviously show you on this. And I'll bring this jacket around with me, you guys, so that as I travel you all can see it. Because I think it's validating for you all to be able to visually see what you watch, if that makes sense. Somebody asked me the other day, how many jackets have I made in my lifetime? Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I have no idea. I love jackets. I really, really like jackets. Okay, so you can see that that sleeve is really beautiful. I'm going to press out those little pleats up in the top so it'll hang really nicely. And let's put the other one in. So again, I just turn it to the right side and just fold it in half. It's kind of like a mirror image. And put a pin at the top and a pin at the bottom. The top one is the shoulder seam. So that's why I say, I mean, you could mark it, but the transferring of the markings is more difficult or more time consuming than just knowing where it is and then folding it and saying, okay, that is going to be my top seam, that's going to be my shoulder seam, and the other one's going to be my underarm seam. So I'll put that there. You know, and I always think of jackets, I think of sewing, I like jigsaw puzzles. I personally like jigsaw puzzles. We've got one going down on the downstairs, on the living room table right now. I love all the pieces coming together. Sewing to me is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle because all the pieces are just coming together. It's fun. So you can see now that in my little jigsaw puzzle of jackets, I only have my jacket, my 2 sleeves, my collar, and my lining. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 pieces. So if I started with 12 pieces, or I don't know, whatever number I started with, I'm down to 5. And I think another thing I like about sewing this way is, again, if I just don't have time, I don't have to sew it all in one sitting. And I think that a lot of women, we can get more done if we recognize the value of those straight seams, or just setting in the sleeves and then leaving, or just doing the welts. I think that's helpful to know. Backstitching, yeah, I don't, factories don't backstitch, you guys. This is a home sewing thing that was created. The only time you backstitch in ready-to-wear is internally. Always when you're on an external seam, you never backstitch because you do what's called overstitching. So backstitching takes a lot of time, and if, I recognize we don't make any mistakes, but if we make mistakes, it's very time consuming to get those mistakes out. So just try to eliminate it and see what happens. Or think about when you learned it and who taught it to you and what its purpose was. Alright, so second sleeve in my lining is where we are. And again, it's not important that the sleeve in the lining be put in exact, but it is important that it be aligned so that it doesn't twist, in the body of the garment. That is important. So while I'm saying it's okay to have pleats and it's okay to have little tucks across the top, the alignment definitely needs to be there. Hoping everybody's hearing that. I think sometimes we make big leaps. I don't want you to make big leaps. Alright, so if you're ready, let's go to the iron, and we are going to press. Then the only thing we have left is to just put together the parts. Do I always sew so fast? Does it seem fast to you all? I guess the answer must be yes. I mean, this is normal how I'm sewing, so I'm not doing anything abnormal. I just usually don't have a few people back there, and I don't have y'all watching. And other than that, it's about the same. Okay, so here we go. Let's put it all together. How are we gonna do this as far as, can they see this? Let's go ahead and press for a while, because we really will only have 2 pressing times. So one will be now and one will be toward the end. And if you press well now, then you don't have to press the sleeves, for instance, ever again. Are we okay now? Thank you. So I'm on the collar. I'm going to press the seam open. I don't have to press it open all the way, but just to get a nice beginning on it. And I think I love fabric that responds well to pressing. This is that Eileen Fisher knit, and it's just really beautiful. So because my under collar is smaller than my upper collar, when I go to press this edge, all I have to do is press these edges together, and it'll automatically pull that under collar under. It'll just automatically happen. Oh, what top am I wearing? This is the new, this is a new pattern, you guys. This is, our PBS is getting ready to, we're going to sell the series. We're just in the final editing stages now. When we pre-sell the PBS, we don't pre-sell it, I'm sorry. When we sell the PBS, we offer a free pattern with it. If you buy it when we first offer it. And so this is the pattern that comes with it. It's pattern number 65. It's called Mary's Wrap. Okay, now this is black. Can they see this? I noticed that you sell one type of sewing machine needle on your website. Is this the only needle we need? It is. It is. Y'all get, I mean, there's so many different kind of needles out there, but they're just, I mean, needles, yes, it's the only needle, it's the only needle I use on everything. Can we show this, Jared? Can they see that? All right, so what I did is when these edges are even, it pulls under that undercollar. Oh, sorry. It pulls under that undercollar. You can see just a little bit. So that's the back side of my collar, and that's the front side of my collar, and you can see that that seam's been pulled under just slightly to the back. Okay, and that's just how I pressed it. But the pressing allows, the collar pieces themselves will do that for you. You don't have to do anything different. When you go to do the edges, it'll hold that up. Okay, so I'm going to put that there, and we'll do our sleeves. I think I'm going to turn around to where I'm normal because it doesn't make a difference, I don't think, to you guys, and it's easier for me. So this is the body of my jacket, and I am going to open up the seams and press. That table. Can you? Thank you. All right, let's tell stories, you guys. What stories do you want to tell while I'm pressing? Where is everybody? Somebody's really Norway? Are you guys watching? Norway, France, and Australia? Oh my gosh. So if you're in Australia, you're like up half the night. Yeah, I was going to say it's breakfast, huh? No, the pins I'm leaving in because those are marking. They're marking my sleeve, remember? Oh, about the iron. What I love about the iron is, first off, there's no water in the iron. There's no water in the iron. The iron's in the water's in the tank, so it's pulling up the water as I need it. And I like that. It's because a couple of reasons. You obviously can't run out of water. I mean, that's not the right way to say it. You obviously can't. When you put the water in the iron, you have such a little amount of water, and you keep refilling your iron over and over and over during your ironing process, during your sewing process. You're making aprons while you're watching? That's too funny. That's called multitasking. I don't. I don't ever use a sleeve roll. I don't think they're necessary. But that's because they don't have them in the industry, and that's how I learned. I didn't even know what it was when you guys... Remember you first showed me one time, somebody showed me, and I'm like, what's that thing? And then they said, here, I'll show you how to use it. And I'm like, okay, and I need that? It's 8:45 in England? 8:45 at night. Wow. We sewers are the same. I don't care where we live. I hope you all take that as a compliment. We're just good, honest people. In Qatar, it's 11:45 p.m. Oh my gosh. Welcome all over the world. How about that? Isn't it the magic of the internet? You know, it's so interesting. As we started these webcasts, many years ago, Brett launched the first webcast. He's not here today, but he launched the first one. Oh, did you? Oh, really? Is that true? Oh, okay. So, should I correct that? Alright, so now we're on the jacket body, and I'm just pressing the seams open. I didn't know that. I didn't remember that. I I just remember, wasn't it like down in the office? Did we? No, 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 no. It was down in the office. If you go back to the original one. We're just arguing, you guys. Okay, so now I'm just pressing all these seams open. This fabric presses so easily. I mean, see, and this is where I just love the fabrics, because I just don't enjoy wrestling with the fabric. If you are using, oops, sorry. If you are using a polyester, just be more patient with your pressing time. Your pressing time is just gonna, just gonna be slower. The good news is about polyester is once you press it, it never comes unpressed. So, a jacket like this, because it's cotton, it's going to be a little higher maintenance as far as pressing it. Not in care or anything like that, but just in the actual pressing of the jacket. 9:45 in the morning in New Zealand, so it's Monday morning, right? It's Monday morning. All right, pretty cool. Did you call in sick to work, or are you retired, or do you? We're going to start getting a this is Ellie Tahari. This is beautiful fabric. It really is pretty fabric. It's an Ellie Tahari. It's a cotton, but it's got a really pretty texture to it. Really pretty texture. So what I normally do when I'm pressing these seams is I will press them open and from the wrong side, and then I go back and give them a really nice press, lots of steam from the outside. You really want to give your jacket, I've seen many women in class, they get excited about their jacket and how nice it fits, and they don't give it this really nice press. It's really important to be patient with the process. It is just really important to have, this press really is kind of a final press. I mean, I know it won't literally be, but as far as pressing seams and getting them to lay right and sleeves and all of that, you won't really press it again. Why aren't the first two webcasts available on the website? See, Jared, that was your fault. And when will the pants fitting 2 be available again? Pants fitting 2. Okay, so the first two webcasts, we probably should just take them down. I can't remember exactly what happened, but we were broadcasting originally through correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, through Ustream, and we were paying a lot of money, like thousands. Oh, that's right. Okay, so Jared's reminding me, because Jared's behind the scenes. He's been here all along too. So the first ones that we did had commercials. That's right. And we couldn't, that's right, I remember that. Okay, so we couldn't control those commercials. So what that meant is we were going along teaching something and a commercial would come up, but everybody's commercial would come up at, hold on to that question, everybody's commercials would come up at different times. And so that was like ridiculous. It was pretty hard to teach something when everybody's having a commercial at different times, and we couldn't control the commercials. So that's when we actually bought we bought the rights to have no commercials is what we did. That's right, I remember that. Okay, so those first two webcasts, though, because of the way they were, we actually didn't own them. They were owned by the server or the webcast. Now, we didn't know that in the beginning because this was all, we were just learning. And so we cannot get back those webcasts, but we have redone them. So, yeah, you're not missing a thing. We need to take them down just so you don't think you're missing a thing. But you're not missing anything. All right? Okay, so there's my jacket body. Hold on one second. When I go to do my jacket body, I have a tendency to just put on a hanger. I think once it's a body and once it's pressed, it's okay to have it be on a hanger. And I'll hang it for right there until I press the lining. Okay, sorry, what's the question? Yes I mean yes and no, you guys. This is a day off for everybody involved. This is this is not, we're really doing this for the children. We're doing this for Toys4Tots. I think that if you all will, okay, just let me interrupt. As I'm pressing the lining, I am pressing from the right side only. You don't need to press on the inside the wrong side. I'm only pressing from the right side. What iron are you using? How much does it cost? I need a Christmas present idea. This is a great Christmas present idea, you guys. This will cost you, watch for it to go on sale. It'll cost, actually you went and got this. I think it cost around $200. But you can get it on sale like $150. You really can if you watch for it. And the best place to watch for it is Macy's. I think Macy's has them online. You can use coupons for them. You can use, Joann's has them. Bed Bath & Beyond has them. And some have discontinued, so I'm not sure who carries them, but they are around $200 regular price, and then you can get a deal from there. You can get different prices. Okay, do you use a pressing cloth when pressing the front? No. I used to sell these irons, you guys. The question is, do you use a pressing cloth when pressing the front? The answer is no, because of this iron. Another reason I like this iron, because the template on this iron, it's like titanium. So you don't need any kind of press cloth at all. So everything I'm pressing, you can see that I'm just pressing flat. And I'm pressing it from the right side of the fashion fabric. Does the jacket only need 2 yards of the blue because you're using the black for the collar? Yes. And also because it's a shorter jacket. So you only need the length twice. The length of the jacket is less than a yard, so 2 yards will do everything. This is really pretty, you guys. I'll tell you something. This is really pretty. Cutting off my little ends here. Hold on. Just a few little threads. Will you ever redo a sewing of the blouse 600 from start to finish? It isn't really clear to watch. The ones your video now are so clear. Our and I appreciate you saying that. I think that our quality changes, you guys, as our upload speeds change. We do the highest. I got an email a little while ago and somebody said, oh, they can't stand watching our YouTube because of the lousy quality. It's not our lousy quality, it's simply that we're trying to broadcast live. The main goal is to connect with you, not just give you information, and allow you all to ask questions. So in that process, we downgrade our quality so that we can broadcast live. Otherwise, as you all know, it buffers as it broadcasts, so we don't want it to buffer. So we go to the highest quality of where most people can receive us. So doing the blouse, I think that's actually a really good suggestion. Should we make you wait a year? Should we do that next year for the Toys4Tots? You guys, I'm really into helping these kids. Can you tell? Okay, you did not do the same with the lady holding on her pants while you drape the darts on her. You're going to have to give me some reference. I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm pressing this lining and you're talking about some lady with pants. But just let me know and I'll answer it. Okay, we're back to the machine. Are you guys? Do I always do what? Do I always clip my darts open and then press them? Yes. Okay, my lining's over there. So guess what? All we have left is we're going to put the pieces together. So you can choose any order you want. I normally put the collar on first. Only the collar. I'm only going to base the collar in place because that will hold the neck edge in place. And what I know about sewers is, you guys, we get so excited about these jackets, when they're looking good, we have a tendency to overhandle them. So don't do that. You can try on the body, but I would suggest before you even try on the body to stabilize the neck edge if you don't have the collar on. Because the neck edge is, the iron is the Rowenta DG 5030. Sorry, I forgot to answer that. Sorry, you guys. Now the 5030 may not be out and available anymore. There's an 80 something. But you know, things get more expensive, so they keep up in prices. I'm behind on questions? Okay. Does that mean ironing on the right side of the iron won't give a shine to your garment? Absolutely it means that. I don't ever have to worry about my fabric, what I'm ever. And when I go to workshops, I take this thing with me because it's that good. And I think a lot of women, when they come to the workshops and once you iron with it, they won't ever go back to another kind of iron. I noticed that you are ironing, not pressing. I don't know what that means. P.S. quilting tip? I'm not sure what that means. Okay, so when I'm pinning this collar in place, yeah. Oh, Debbie's daughter? What about that? That's Ruth. And you guys, a really interesting thing happened. We were filming, a few weeks ago, we were filming PBS, and we film here in Dallas now. This is really exciting because we film here in Dallas. We have an amazing crew. Anyway, I had gone to Hager Slacks. Hager, I don't know if you know this or not, but Hager is actually making a new pant now that is made from plastic water bottles. But this fabric is amazing. I mean, it's a poly, but it's so soft and so drapey. There's 3 water bottles in every pant. I won't spoil it. That's part of our PBS. It's one of our PBS shows. Anyway, so I went to Hager. Hager's headquartered here in Dallas, Texas. And I've known, you know, the people there for many years. Anyway, I said, okay, so, and next year is Hager's 90th anniversary. And they are a wonderful company. Anyway, so I asked if they would be willing to be on the show and talk about this particular fabric, and they said yes. So it turns out, and I didn't know this until the day we filmed, but Ruth, who was our pant fitter, the daughter, Debbie's daughter, she now works at Hager. She's gone through fashion merchandising. She graduated from TWU, or North Texas. I guess it was North Texas. Anyway, they have a fashion design department, and here it is all these years later, and she's working for Hager now. Okay, so I went ahead and pinned this in place, just lining up the seam with center back, and then you want to go to each side. And what you want to make sure is that when you put those edges together, they are the same distance from center front on the collar. So that's all I have to worry about right now. I don't have to sew the collar on. I don't have to baste it on. I don't baste mine on. I think it's an extra step. But if you're new and if you're not sure, baste it on. You know, don't worry about the extra step. So I'm going to put the sleeves in because I think that's the next step on our agenda. So we've got them all basted in place. Remember what I said, I pick them up, I fold them in half. That's the other side. I'm going to put that there. This one I've already done. I fold it in half. I've got a pin at the top, a pin at the bottom. And you see how the lower seam is the front, the higher seam is the back. And I'm going to set that sleeve in. Okay? Go ahead. Can you get the PBS shows online? You can, some of them, but according to our contract with PBS, we are only allowed to put up a certain amount, so you'll never get all of them. We're allowed to put up 4 on YouTube, yeah. Have we put up 5? We just have a seal as to how many we can do. So there's 13 shows to a series. We have so many we can do off each one. If they're on YouTube, it's something that usually PBS doesn't want us to do because their information they want to be new, fresh, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we have to be careful. Alright, when we do the first series, when we first release the series, you guys, we do the whole series and the free pattern. We do it for $50, $49.99. Go ahead, what? Okay, so you're going to have to say that again. If you go to the YouTube Silhouette Pattern site and scroll down, there's playlists for each individual series, 100, 200, 300, 400, that we've uploaded. Other than that, DVDs. Alright, so basically what I'm doing here is I am pinning the top to the top, the bottom to the bottom, as I mentioned, and then I always pin the top in first because the top has all the easing in. So I have a tendency to pin that in first and then pin the rest of the body in. I mean the rest of the sleeve. Okay, and once that's done, I'm going to put the sleeve down and just literally stitch around. That's it. Alright, and it doesn't matter where you start or where you stop. The tie interfacing is down against the machine. Size 10, those are 70-10 needles. Those aren't 10, just to clarify. I think I had a little box up here. Yeah, they're 70-10, you guys. But yes, that's what I use. I use that to sew everything. Leather, I use everything. Okay, if your sleeve isn't going in or won't pin in or something of that nature, make sure you did all the adjustments, make sure you did all the changes, make sure that, you know, sometimes I've noticed the interfacing isn't pulled tight enough. You'll kind of have to go through that little myriad of checklists to make sure everything's done correctly. But the sleeve will sew in beautifully. You're going to use the tie interfacing to make sure it does. And this is where your jacket actually starts becoming a real jacket. It has sleeves. This is a real professional way to make them look beautiful. Remember that my sleeve is down against the feed dog. 70-10 I use to sew everything. The 70-10 needle, it's the only needle I use. It's the only needle I use in my sergers. It's the only needle I use, period. Pretty simple girl, huh? Okay, so I sewed all the way around in a circle, came back to square one. Hold on, I missed that one little section down here. I'm going to fix that real quick. Alright, and we're going to show you how it looks. You know, I can't tell you that I really use heavy denim. I mean, when you say heavy denim, yeah, you know, I don't really use heavy denim. But all the denim I sew on, I only use the 70-10 and it works beautiful. But I mean, I guess if you went up to like a 12-ounce denim, you know, that would not, it would not work. Alright, isn't that beautiful? So the tie, I'm going to press it in a minute. I'm going to put both sleeves in and then we'll press it. The tie interfacing is going to go out into the sleeve. It's going to make this beautiful cap. Isn't that gorgeous? It's probably my favorite part of sewing a jacket is putting in these sleeves. Did you interface the fabric on this jacket? No interfacing. No interfacing needed because it's a cotton, but you can see it doesn't wrinkle. In my handling of it, there's no wrinkling. It's got great body. It doesn't need any reinforcing, and it doesn't need any additional body. So I didn't do anything to it. You can see in the inside of the jacket there's nothing. Look, you guys, it's actually becoming a jacket. It's beautiful, isn't it? Oh my gosh, I love making jackets. Okay, so let's put in this one. Now, what I would recommend is when you, and I'm not going to do it because you literally don't need to sit and watch me take out tie interfacing, but you baste it in the tie interfacing. It's that original stitch. Go back and take that out. It's not that it will show. It's not for any of that. I've just noticed that in my jackets that I've made, it just relaxes it a little bit more. It just has a more relaxed feel to it all the way around. Which size sew study table do you recommend? I do move my machine occasionally, but only within my house. Yeah, I like, this is the 18 by 24. It's big. It's big enough because what you notice is I can leave the whole jacket there. Otherwise, you're constantly fighting going up and over this arm deal. I think it's a big advantage. I really do in my sewing. Alright, so this seam is going to go to the bottom. This is the underarm seam. So when I folded that in half, then what you want to do is put in the top and just kind of push that into where it is right against. Make sure your seam allowances are even. Remember, you're dealing with concave and convex, so you don't want to not make sure your seam allowances are even, otherwise your stitch lines won't get back together. So stitch there, and so just pin down to that area, then go ahead and go to the other side, and again kind of aggressively push that little cap up in there. What height do you recommend for a sewing table? I don't know, I like this one, but I'm not sure what it is. This is probably 30 inches, 30, not 36, 36 is probably too high. 32 to 34, but you know, it depends on how tall you are, you guys. I'm tall, so I don't know. I probably don't know enough about all that stuff to recommend to you. Can you haul your sewing machine down to Staples to buy a table? Sure. I don't see why not. Those Staples people are pretty nice. I would think they would help you. Alright, we're almost there. This one side has got a little bit of extra, so I'm going to just push it up and make it a little more aggressive here. Remember, it's going to be on the bottom, so it'll take a little bit more than you think it will. Just kind of push it up. And the bottom of the sleeve is bias, so it does have a little bit of give to it, but be careful not to pull too much or else it'll ripple when you have finished the sleeve. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so just sometimes you have to finesse it a little bit. Again, it doesn't matter where you start or where you stop stitching, but you're going to stitch all the way around. And you're going to make sure the sleeve is on the bottom. I'm trying to put this down so you guys can see. But I think even if you can't see, you know what I'm doing. Hopefully I'm describing it and you guys can ask questions. Keep these seam allowances the same. So when I did the original tie interfacing, the tie interfacing had a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Ideally I should be stitching right over that same basting line, but it doesn't always happen. That's why you want to take out the tie interfacing. I'm sorry, let me say that correctly. You don't take out the tie interfacing, you take out the stitch that was initially what the tie interfacing did initially. Take that out. It's the basting stitch is what it is. Can you give a push for the Tri-State Northeast to push PBS to air Fit to Stitch. It's not on the schedule or listed in the program list. I can't push it, but you know who can? You all. Get your ASGs together. You know, we give the programs to PBS, and we actually pay. We pay the program. We pay PBS to take the programs. So they're not going to listen to us say that, you should run this show. But PBS, the thing is you're the audience, you guys. They will listen to you. And I'm going to tell you something. We did that in a webcast a little while ago. We said, call your PBS stations. And we had some customers who literally took us to heart. And I got letters from the program, from the stations, saying that they will not ever take the station off because of the loyalty of the customer. So, boy, if there's ever a time we need you guys, this is the time we need you guys. We need you guys to be vocal, I think there's a whole thing about understanding how powerful you are and understanding that your voice matters. Certainly does with PBS. Every PBS station is run by a different programmer, y'all, so it's really you should know that they listen to you. And a lot of times they don't know the difference between programs. They don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. Did I pre-wash the fabric? I actually did. I just threw it in the washing machine, threw it in the dryer, didn't change a single bit. Look at that beautiful sleeve. That is so pretty. It's amazing. It's not amazing, but it's really pretty. See, now it's not a fripple, but there's just a little tiny, it's not pressed yet either, but there's a little tiny pull right there. Actually, it's gone. Anyway, that kind of stuff, once you take out the tie interfacing, it has a tendency to just relax the whole sleeve a little bit. You notice when the tie interfacing was in there, the whole sleeve cap kind of pulled up, it kind of puckered. Well, that's what you want, but when you take that out, it allows it to relax. So I'm not going to do it because, again, it just takes time, but you really want to do that. Princess seam bodice of a formal gown. Do I sew the boning to the seams of the lining or the fashion fabric? You can do both. It depends on how soft the fabric is. We did the boning. I think we did that. We put that one up on PBS. It depends on how soft the fabric is. You may need to do it to the fabric. You may be able to get it by with just the lining. Try either one. All right, we're going to go to the yarning board. I'm going to press these sleeves, and I'm going to put in the shoulder pads all at the same time. That's your cue. Jared. We're going to the yarning board. Okay, hang on. He's answering questions. We're down to one person right now, so hang on. We're taking shifts. Okay. So I want to go to the yarning board to press these and show you all how to put the shoulder pads in. Alright, and I brought some pins with me because you're going to need a couple pins. So I'm going to take the jacket to the outside and put it right on the edge of the board. And I want these seams to go out. All seams I want to go out into the sleeve. They'll naturally just go, they need help. They won't go the right way. The bottom of the sleeve will naturally come up. You don't really need to press the bottom of the sleeve. But this portion of the sleeve needs help. And so all I'm doing is I lay it on the end of the board, is pushing all of these seams out. And again, see, the bottom of the sleeve will naturally just come up because they can't really do anything else. You don't really need to even press the bottom. Okay, then when I go to turn it this way, do the same thing. Just literally press them out. There's no shoulder pad right now. I'm just making sure those seams are pressed the right direction. Okay. Once I've done that, hold on one second. I'm going to put the shoulder pad, and I'm going to extend the shoulder pad to the cut line, not the stitch line. So the shoulder pad's going to go beyond the cut line, beyond the stitch line, I'm sorry. And then what it's going to do is hold up the seam, so you get this beautiful roll right there. And I'm going to put a pin at the front, and I'm going to put a pin at the back. And what that's going to do is it's going to hold the shoulder pad in place. I'm going to sew it here in just a minute. But until you get there, just you can pin that. See how beautiful that is. I mean, that's just gorgeous. And then your shoulder pad kind of becomes your ham, if that's what you want to call it. And you can see that just lays so pretty. I'm going to do that to both of them. And again, all those seams are out toward the sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to press this one. Okay, what's that question? I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you mean when you say remove the basting stitch from the tie interfacing before stitching. I didn't say before stitching. I said after stitching. So after you put the sleeve in, you've basted the tie interfacing in. You did that earlier whenever you did it. You put the sleeve in. So now you've got 2 rows. You've got a basting stitch and you've got a regular stitch. You're going to remove the basting stitch after the tie interfacing is sewn into place. In the jacket, you press the seam allowance into the arm, but in 195 you press it into the body. Well, one's a jacket and one's a blouse, you guys. You don't do it the same. You have what's called a sleeve head when you have a jacket. And a sleeve head, in order to make it a sleeve head, it has to be pushed out into the sleeve, otherwise you don't get a nice roll line, which is what makes such a beautiful jacket. See how pretty that is? This is the 1-inch shoulder pad. Yeah, you don't have to. You can use a 1/2 inch. I'm using a 1 inch on this because the fabric is fairly light and I want to give it a little bit better drape. This fabric is pretty thin. It's pretty light. Just an FYI. Okay, so the shoulder pad goes out into the seam, goes past the seam, the width of the seam allowance. This is where shoulder pads got a bad name because so many people over the years put them way past the stitch line. Like extremely way past, and it made them look really silly and, you know, etc., etc. Alright, so again, I kind of give that a little press. Hold on just 1 second, Jared. And now I'm ready to go sew them in. Okay, question is, and we're going to change this camera, doesn't pressing from the right side leave an imprint of the seam allowance? No, it doesn't. I mean, you can see it for yourself. I just press from the outside. It's really beautiful. I'm going to put the jacket on the mannequin here in a little bit when we finish, and you can see. And we'll do all kinds of close-ups so that you all can see all that. Because we're getting really close to being finished. Alright, so I'm going to sew the shoulder pad in place, and to do that I'm going to come to the inside of the jacket where I put those pins, and I'm going to grab it with just the shoulder pad and the tie interfacing and all the seams, they're all together, and I'm just going to do a stitch like this on the sewing machine. And here I go back and forth. And you can do it by hand if you want, but I just do it by machine. Okay, same thing on both ends. Once you have both ends done, the shoulder pad will stay the right distance out. So when you pre-wash the fabric, whoops, sorry. When you pre-wash the fabric, you press the fabric before you cut. Have you had a problem on fabric fraying when washing? Yes. Fabric will fray when you wash it, but I mean not to the point that it's unusable or that it's, you know, has to do anything, you know, you don't really have to worry about it. It'll only fray so much. What continues fabric to fraying is when we keep cutting it off. If we don't trim it, it won't keep fraying. Okay, so I've joined the shoulder pad in 3 places. Let me just turn it out and I'll take the pins out and show you that it will stay in place now. So I've joined it Alright, I've joined it right here in the front. I mean, you can't see it because it's just to the seam. I've joined it about the same place in the back, and then I've joined it at the shoulder seam area of the shoulder, you know, up at the base. So that keeps the shoulder pad in the right position and everything, you know, holds in place really good. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to anchor it here at the pin, and then basically at the width of the shoulder pad. If the shoulder pad is too wide, you can trim it down. You don't have to use the full length. But this is really quick and really easy and a great way to sew them in. The welts on my welt pocket open even, though I have butt the edges together and stitched very carefully. Can you tell me why? The welts were not cut on the bias. Well, there you go. You probably answered your own question. They need to be on the bias, otherwise they don't give. They don't give and they don't come back. How come you didn't do them on the bias? But I also think, you guys, that I personally like when those welts open a little bit. I think they look more natural. I think they look better. Don't be so hard on yourself that you're worried about that they don't, lay perfectly flat. I think I like them when they have a little bit of opening because they look real to me. Okay, hold on one second. What is your opinion of sewing a set-in sleeve with the underarm seams unsewn? You can't do that. It's a two-piece sleeve. You can do it in a blouse, but you can't do it in a jacket. So in a jacket, you have to set in the sleeve. Or else there's a method that I've, not aware of. Is this fabric for sale on the site? It is not. I don't think any of our fabric is for sale on the site. Oh, is it for sale? I'm sorry, it is for sale. It's not on whatever. It's not discounted, but it's for sale. Correct. I don't know, it might be gone by now. I don't know. But anyway. Okay, so look, you guys, it's looking like a jacket, isn't it? It actually looks like a jacket. Because guess how many pieces we're down to? 2 pieces. So here we have it. We're going to finish this up. So I'm going to take, if I serge the right sides together so you have a tube before washing, the edges won't fray and the fabric doesn't get knotted up. You guys, the knotting isn't that big a deal. I mean, it's okay if you want to, but I've washed fabric for a million years and you just cut it off. I'm all about, I don't know. It doesn't make a difference. If you guys want to do that, that's fine. But again, I'm from Ready to Wear. They don't wash 28,000 yards of fabric or worry about it knotting up beforehand. But if it works, it's cool. I just saw an I Love Lucy show, and Ricky's shoulder pads were a good 2.5 beyond his side seam. Yes, that's exactly right. So where you put these shoulder pads, you guys, don't, that makes a difference. Don't discount shoulder pads because they were put out too far, which is unfortunately what a lot of us did. Shoulder pads are a really good thing. We just have we get lost a little bit. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm lining up the facing to the jacket. Same, I'm lining up the center back seams, I'm lining up the shoulder seams, I'm just doing along the neck edge, I'm just doing a 1-to-1 alignment. So it's 1-to-1 because the body and the jacket were exactly the same. There's no changes. All I'm doing is going through and kind of lining them up. On the pattern envelope for this jacket, tricot interfacing is listed. In which situation would you use interfacing? Alright, so I can tell you guys are coming in at different times, which is okay. There's 3 reasons why I would use interfacing. I would want to retard the wrinkling, like in a linen. I would want to add body, something that's really lightweight fabric that doesn't have a lot of drape to it. A jacket needs drape. So something that doesn't have a lot of body, I would want to add drape to. And then the third reason is if it's a fabric that's loosely woven, and I know it's really not made to, I've done lots of jackets like this. Something that's really loosely woven and it's really not meant to be a jacket, but I love the fabric and I want to do a jacket anyway. You can go in and fuse the whole fabric and really get the fabric to be something that it's not. And that's a great use because it's so beautiful. Okay. Alright, so again, I'm just kind of pinning this together to make sure I can then sew it. And and I will make one pass along the neck edge. I will sew the collar on all at the same time. One fail swoop. Take the time to pin it. I've pinned the collar on, but I want to make sure that the actual garment sews on, you know, the facing, the lining, sew on without any problem. So you can see it's one swoop along the neckline. Do you wash wool? I do. But keep in mind, I'll do a sample because I want to make sure that it turns out that I like it. So a lot of times I'll cut two like little squares, and I'll wash it and compare it back, and then I'll dry it and compare it back. Okay, so keep all your edges the same. And right now I just started sewing through the collar. The collar, I've got the front facing and the jacket together, and it's like a little sandwich. The collar is in between. And I'll sew this one part, and then I'll show you where we're at. And when you're coming along here, make sure these seam allowances are open. And if you don't, you can always go back and open them up, but if you just kind of keep a lookout underneath, you can make sure that they're open all the way. Or like that one I didn't pin open. And that's on the fashion fabric. Obviously you guys know I didn't worry about the lining. Alright, so just a straight seam all the way across. Something got caught up here, not sure what that is. It's a thread, so I'm just going to clip it because it doesn't matter what it is. Okay, remember when I lined up my collar, I made sure that the collar ended the same amount on each side of the jacket. That's just my machine telling me my bobbin thread is low. So that means I went through one whole bobbin so far. So we're going to change our bobbin really quick so we don't run out of bobbin. Alright, so let me show you this where we are here. This is just the whole jacket neckline together. So when I go to put this together, I'm not going to yet, I'm just going to show you. You can see that there's the collar. Isn't that pretty? And it's the same distance from both edges on the front of the jacket. That's really important, otherwise my notched lapel will look, it'll look like somebody sewed it when they were past toxicity level. Okay? Okay, so that seam just sewed all the way across there. Now what I'm going to do is take it back. Don't fold anything or do anything yet, because now I'm going to do the front of the jacket. And that's the front to the front facing. I'm going to sew along this front. I'm going to take the needle off and change directions, and then I'm going to come back on this way and sew that notched edge. And you only sew to the edge of the facing. Don't sew the rest of it, because then we're going to turn around and finish the bottom of our jacket. So we have about 2 more seams to go and we're complete. But then I want to show you the sleeves. And I want to show you a little bit of pressing and then answer any questions you have. Now you guys, when I did this, I have a tendency to do this because whenever you're shortening a jacket, if the facing is too short, it will pull the bottom of the jacket up. So I have a tendency to leave my facing a little bit longer, just so that when I get to the bottom portion like this, I follow the jacket, not the facing. So in other words, I'm going to lay this down, and you can see that my facing's a little bit longer. Follow the jacket. Don't follow the facing. And so right off that edge. And you don't need to cut it off, you can leave it in there. Let's do the other side and then we'll turn the whole thing inside out. Because it is now officially one piece. We have almost completed our jigsaw puzzle. Way too exciting. So if ever you're doing this and you're lining and your jacket and if your front facing is a little bit lower, follow the jacket. Don't follow the facing. Because your jacket, you cut the jacket the same on both sides. Alright, so we're going to do some corner folding. We're going to fold, and we're going to invert to the right side. So on each place, we're going to fold, and turn to the right side. Just put your finger up there, hold it, and turn that to the right side. That's our front. That's our collar. As we get over to here, this is the other side. We're going to fold, turn to the right side. Yeah, I will. Hang on just one second. I'll explain that again. So whenever you cut two pieces of fabric, especially in this case, where I've done several things. I've shortened the jacket, I've shortened the facing, I'm using different fabrics for facings than I am for jackets. So just a multitude of cutting on a table. Life is not perfect. Let me show you this again before I fold it. My black, which is my facing, is a little bit longer than my jacket. So don't follow the facing and don't even worry that they don't match. Follow the jacket, because if you follow the jacket on both sides, you'll know that the jacket will be the same on the outside of both parts. So follow the jacket. Don't try to get them to line up. Now the reason I say that is I have a tendency to cut my front facing a little bit lower. So when I shorten this jacket, if I shorten the jacket 5 inches, I only shorten the jacket or the facing 4.5 inches. And the reason I did that is because if it was somehow shorter or pulled up or something, if the facing is too short on the inside, that's terrible. You can't fix that. So I have a tendency to make it just a little bit longer so that if in the sewing process or cutting it's not right, I can still follow the jacket. Notice that when I did this, it's all laying down flat, it's just a little bit longer. So follow the seam allowance here, and that's where you want to do your 3/8. And that way you're sewing, it'll basically correct itself is what it will do. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Because remember, when I cut out the jacket, I cut it out at the same time. So I know the jacket to be right, the right length, the right everything. I'm going to push the lining down to the sleeves. Alright, and we're going to finish up a couple things. So the first thing I want you to see is by following the jacket, what I was saying to you is you can see that the front of that jacket is identical. It's exactly the same. So, and I knew that because I cut out the jacket at the same time, same place. I get women who, they've made this thing and one side's different than another. Part of it is because the fabric's up, the fabric's down, all those variables. So here, if you follow the jacket, even if the facing is a little bit off, you will get it to be straight across the front, and it's perfect. Alright, now, I've turned those corners. I'm not going to press yet. I'm going to come inside, and I'm going to, whoops. I'm going to show you how to finish this piece right here. Remember the notched in the beginning. One was the hem, and one was the lining. So now you can see that the seam allowance here, we'll press that down, but the hem continues right where that stops. And what I'm going to do is just put a couple of pins here to hold up the hem. And the lining comes and finishes right to that portion. The reason we serged that little section is because you can see now that it shows just barely. So I'm going to look at the hem, and I'm going to continue that same hem all the way to the other side. And I just do, the hem will not hold up, the lining will not hold up the hem. So I just go through and I just do a little hand stitch on this lining all the way. And I go about halfway, then come to this side and do the same thing. So make sure that this pulls out correctly. And then go ahead and hem this lining. Hem the jacket. Because we're going to press this here in a minute. Okay, and what I will see is that the lining will come below the hem. Below the turnip. So this is the portion, the reason I serged it earlier is because that will show, it won't show, the lining will be there, but if you look underneath the lining you'll see it. So you can always just give it a nice little serge so that if it exposes itself, it won't really show. Okay, I'm going to put this on the mannequin here for just a minute, but I want to show you a couple more things. I want to sew the sleeves. I've pushed the sleeve down the jacket, and I'm going to hem the sleeve now with the lining. And so I'm going to pull the lining out, and I've got wrong side of lining against wrong side of sleeve. And I'm going to make sure the seams line up. So wrong side to wrong side, and line up the seams. Oh, sorry. Better? Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. Okay, so there you have it. I have wrong side of lining, it's down. Now the sleeve will buckle a little bit because the lining is shorter than the sleeve. So when you have the raw edges together here, the lining is going to somewhat buckle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in between the jacket and the lining, and I'm going to pull out the sleeve lining. And what will follow it is the sleeve because they're pinned together. And just kind of be gingerly, don't pull too hard because there's pins in there, you don't want to wreck your fabric. And so this is where the wrong sides are together, and you're just going to pull it out until you get it all the way out. The pins will stop the sleeve from twisting or going any weird directions. And then what I'm going to do is one seam at a time so that I don't twist the sleeve is I'm going to just change this sleeve around to where it's right sides together. But still my seams are still aligning, but I've got right sides together. And then do it to the other side. So I've got wrong sides together. I'm going to take out the pin. I'm going to flip the seams around and then put it back in. Then I'm going to sew with 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'll show you what happens. This is just finishing off the sleeve. And it's really easy to do it all by machine. And your sleeve lining will hem the sleeve for you. Okay, now keep in mind that I'm always going to, when I'm sewing lining to a fashion fabric, I always want to keep the lining side up. And all you're going to do in this case is just sew a little circle. And just go all the way around. And your seams will meet each other again. Okay, now when I go to take it out to the right side, the lining will hold up the hem. And the pattern, I have figured it in, you'll have about a 1.5 inch hem in there. And so, I do not press the bottom of that. Let it hang for, when a jacket is new, I put on a mannequin and I just let it sit for a little while because it just really needs some time for everything to kind of gel together. I know that sounds really crazy, but it really does. It needs some time to just kind of mold, and you'll be amazed how in a day or so just all the fabric goes the right way. It's very cool. It's really, really cool. So don't try to just, I don't ever make a jacket and wear it like that next day. I give it a chance to kind of, all the pieces to kind of you're going to think I'm losing my marbles here. All the pieces to get to kind of know each other. You know, the collar is new to the facing. Everybody's new. Nobody knows anybody yet. They don't know where to go or what to do. So give it a few days to get to know each other, and it's amazing how it actually becomes a jacket. But I would put on a mannequin or put on a shaped hanger. Don't just put on a straight hanger, because it won't like it. It won't get to know each other well. Okay, let me finish this 1 second, and then because I want to go to the ironing board to finish this all up. We're there, you guys. Okay, so again, pull the sleeve out. Gingerly, the sleeve will follow it. You're at wrong sides together. Take out one pin at a time. Turn it to right sides together. Make sure your fashion fabric seam is open when you do that. Okay, and remember you're going to sew with the lining side up because the feed dogs will eat that lining. You don't really even have to pin both of them. I only pin both, just, I don't know, I just want to make sure. If that lining twists before you anchor it in, then you're not going to get your arm down that sleeve, trust me. I don't care how hard you try, you're not going to get your arm down that sleeve. So I'm probably playing a little too cautious because I just don't like to unpick. And just go all the way around the circle until they all meet up again. Okay, sorry. 195. I've made the necessary corrections. For a great fit. Is the back piece on this pattern the same as on the other knit pattern, so I can just use this back piece when I'm making? It is. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. How much? Boy, I don't know off the top of my head. There's a formula. Let me turn this inside out. There is a formula when you are making lining. It is the pattern. Can they see me if I'm standing? No, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. It's the pattern minus the lining minus the facings plus a seam allowance. So in this case where you guys, when I do that new sleeve, because it's just newly pressed, leave a pin in there because otherwise that seam can still flop out, especially when you're using a really soft fabric like this. I'm going to go ahead and reach up there and make sure it's going the other way. Just a second. So on your sleeve, to finish that question, it is the pattern minus the hem, because it's the hem of the sleeve, plus seam allowances. So I think we have an 1.5 inch hem, so you know, I go through that formula and then that's how I do the cut lines. Just want to make sure that has a pin there because it needs a little bit of support to keep that out in place. Okay, so that's pulled out. This one's pulled out, I think. Yep. Alright, let's go to the ironing board. I just want to iron a couple things and then we're going to put it on our little mannequin. Alright, so when you're ironing this lapel, what you want to do, I'll get these pins out of my mouth. Alright, hang on just 1 second, is you want to mark where the roll line is. I mean, for right now I can just lay it down and press this. But you want to know where that roll line is. And the reason you want to know that is, especially with having a different color here, and the main reason I used a different color is so that you all could see what I'm doing here. When you're using the same fabric, you can't see it as well. Along this front edge, right here is my button. I can see there's an actual, like a little indentation. So right there for about 1 inch, you're going to press it even. Above that, you're going to press the blue in just a little bit. Okay, so you're going to go above it, you're going to press the blue in a little bit so that the blue doesn't show behind the black. Right at the button, for about an inch, you're going to press it even, exactly even, to where both sides are the same. And then on the bottom portion, take it to the inside of the jacket, and you're going to pull the black in. Alright, so that you can't cut a facing piece different, because you can't cut it different in those three places. Okay, I guess you could, but it's generally not done like that. So right at the button is where it's even. I'm going to put my button right here. And so you see no black, even, and then you see black. So that when it rolls back, and I'll put it on the mannequin so you can see it, you have those differences. Okay, I'm just going to give a light press to the hem, just for right now. It's beginning to look a lot like a jacket. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Okay, I'll just knock it off while I'm ahead. Okay, so again on this side, I'm going to press it just basically in here. Now again, this is really easy to do if you have a fabric that's, you know, really nice, that presses really nice. The button? Oh, you guys, it's not that big a deal. I don't make my buttons that big a deal on a jacket, because, and the reason I don't is because I think that I don't want them to take away from the jacket, if that makes sense. You're excited to see the button. That's too funny. All of this work and you're excited to see the button. I tell you. Okay, so mark easily where you are. I'm actually going to come back on this jacket, and I'm going to do a little, I'm going to do a welt pocket, a welt button. Not a welt, you know what I mean. Okay, let's go to the mannequin. And the button I just chose, whoops. Because I'm wearing this with a skirt, here's the skirt that I was originally talking about. And because I have a silver belt, I wanted the button to kind of tie this all in. So I'm going to put this on. Don't worry about that collar rolling. It'll naturally evolve to a beautiful rolled state. Don't get nervous about it, you know, in the beginning. Alright, and so what I did is I chose a button that just has a little bit of black and a little bit of silver, because I wanted both of those entities to be a part of my jacket. Is that gorgeous? Is that gorgeous? Yay! Alright, hang on, we'll bring it a little bit closer so you can see it. Let me get... Alright, I'm just going to kind of angle it there. Don't press the bottom of the sleeve right away. Just let it go. Leave it. Let the jacket just hang. I would button the jacket. Hang on one second. Let me just kind of... Isn't that pretty? Let me turn it a little bit so you can see all sides. You're the one who's creating that roll line, so create it to go all the way from the base here of the neck. Have it come all the way down to the button. You can actually move the button placement up a little bit or down a little bit depending on where you want it to go, but you know, you could move it up, but keep the roll line going all the way down to the button. It's where how the pattern's created. Let me turn it around back so you can see the fit of the back. What do you think? Isn't that amazing? This is way too much fun, you guys. And see, I have this beautiful skirted suit now, which is kind of what I wanted. And still it'll be fun to wear this like with the black slacks If I want to do black slacks with it, I could do that also. So lots of options and lots of opportunities. Okay, let's go back to a little question or answer just for a second here. Okay, the differences between a jacket and a blouse are the structural part of it. So ask that question again, I'm sorry. If you don't have a jacket pattern, you buy this one, silly girls. At an inch or so. You don't have linings. You wouldn't have all the. You don't have a two-piece sleeve on a blouse. You don't have. I mean, the parts of the jacket and the parts of the blouse are. I have no jacket that fits. Can I use a blouse that fits? And add an inch or so? No, no. Let me explain to you. A blouse has a one-piece sleeve. A jacket has a two-piece sleeve. A blouse has a smaller armhole. A jacket has a bigger armhole. You don't have your facings, your lining. I mean, it's all possible. It just depends on how much knowledge you have. But you're better off to buy, I think, if you don't know the differences, to buy a jacket pattern and start with a jacket pattern, which is what we try to do. The jacket pattern is only $9.99. What we did is, and the last webcast we fitted for you, so you could get through all the fitting issues and all those problems, and then move forward. So I know you need to do sew-alongs to meet the needs of most of your viewers. Have you ever considered doing special occasion sew-alongs for beginner sewers? No, and I'll tell you why. Time is our most challenging concept. So these are challenging for us time-wise, logistics, to get everybody together and, get people behind the camera, etc., etc. We have a DVD called Beginning Sewing the Silhouette Way. You can get that. You can watch that. You don't need me. Really, truly, you don't need me. Then you can ask questions. If you need questions, you can ask us. We're happy to help. The reason I'm doing these is because I feel strongly that if you watch, you can learn, but you don't need to on really simple basic. You guys can do that on your own. And we have enough YouTube videos. We have all that to help you. People learn at different speeds. You get to have lots of variables. You don't need us to teach you the beginning. You don't. I mean, I know you like us, and I'm glad you like us, but you don't need us, okay? But when we get to jackets, the whole purpose here today was to just watch and learn, and also don't forget that whole Toys4Tots thing. That was really the motivating factor, was to help us understand that giving makes us grateful, and so we all wanted to give something. What is the best fabric choice for lining? Hands down, silk. Hands down, silk. Love the silk. Love it inside. It's really pretty. I'm going to say silk. Silk has lots of varying prices, so don't feel for a minute that you've, got to spend $100 a yard to get a beautiful silk. You don't. But Bemberg is okay. That's a lining. Whatever slips and is silky and lightweight. That's the only goals. All right? This is so exciting, and we're good. We got our jacket made. We're good. So when I cut the lining, is it 1.65 inches shorter than the fabric? No. 1 inch. Sorry, trying to get this right. I have a jacket that I have to fix the lining as it's too long. The lining should start by being 1 inch shorter than the pattern, than the jacket pattern. Then by the time you roll it, the 2 little 1/4 inches, and you hem the jacket, it will be what you want it to be. If I turn this around and just kind of hold the back and peek in the lining and turn it under, you see the lining is about a 1/2 inch shorter than the jacket. But that's because the jacket has the hem and the lining has the hem already made, and so it won't cause you any problems. Okay? How are you attaching the button to the other side? Just hand stitch. Just hand stitch. I wouldn't do that right now, just simply because I need to put it on and I need to get the overlap just right, and the button placement, I want to make sure that's correct. But y'all know how to do that. You don't need me to show that to you. And don't forget your label. I'm going to sew on a label because I love these labels. I swear, I just love them. I feel like I am really wearing a ready-made garment. I don't know, I know that sounds really crazy, but I love the labels. Please will you leave, please will you leave, oh, will you, or no, no, don't do it, no, I'll leave the back exactly like that. Nothing needs to be attached. When you start attaching things, you start, there's no reason to attach. Everything will hang beautifully inside. It'll feel really comfortable on. I don't ever attach my linings, ever, in any jacket I ever wear. And I don't ever have any issues or problems, or don't attach. Just let it go. Okay? Are we good? All right, a few more questions. It's not 4 o'clock yet. We did good. Wouldn't the lining fabric be fantastic on a wrap top? Of course it would be. Your wrap top, yeah, the lining's gorgeous. It's in our fabric. This is beautiful lining. I think it is. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Are we good? All right, so that means we are going to get back to our family and friends and take care. Again, I have to say thank you with a little less emotion right now for all the support during this time with Brett. It was, for me, I could not leave that hospital. I just simply could not leave for many, many fears, and, I couldn't leave. So thank you all for just being patient, and really for all the kind words, and it means everything to myself and to Brett and to our family. I'm having problem ordering on the website. Do you ship to Qatar? We do. We do ship to Qatar, and we have shipped all over the world. So if you're having problems, the site's up and working. There's no problems on the site. If you can tell me specifically what the problems are, maybe I can help you, but there shouldn't be any problems. All right? You can always email me with questions, Peggy@silhouettepatterns.com. It's the holidays. You need to take time, make yourself a jacket. We all know you donate tons to other things. Do not feel obligated to do this, Toys4Tots. We know you give to lots of charities. We know, we understand. Just if you find that you want to, we don't make a list of who gives. We don't even look at who gives. We just add it all up. It goes through Tuesday night. We add it all up, add a little bit in, and we get a check off. And it's before Christmas, so we can get the kids some toys for Christmas. All right? So again, we make a terrific team. Thank you all for being here. And we will see you next year, right? Next year. We'll post the date up on the site in the next little while. We'll create the next event once we get this posted. We won't get this posted today. It'll probably take us a day or so to get it posted. Everybody's going to go home. So nobody with computer savvy abilities is going to stay to post this. But we'll get it there. All right? All right, so to all of you, happy sewing. Again, thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next year. Bye.